put us to the next level of our budgets. Every year it's gotten better and better. And thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with thanking Nicole, because 99% of what you see here is her hard work that's been put into this. I think, outside of the new cover, Kristen worked on the cover. Everything from cover to cover has been her hard work over the past 4 months. So the budget process, you all know, and for the public to know, really is a never-ending process. It starts in late January, early February, usually with our retreat, kind of setting the stage for some things that are coming up for the upcoming years. This time we ended up talking about a 10-year plan. And the budget process really begins in earnest then. Department heads start by working on their budgets, putting together their operational needs and changes from the prior year, along with their capital needs, position request. And from there, obviously, it comes into Nicole and myself to sit down and go through with meetings with department heads and hear out the request. And from there, we get to where we hopefully have a balanced budget this time, which we do, not utilizing fund balance, and we'll talk through some of the revenue aspects of kind of what we're expecting this year. But this is really, about a 4 or 5 month process that goes into it. And then you get to the passing of it in June. It starts in July, and then before you know it again, you're rolling back around and starting the process again. So with audit mixed in the middle there. So it's a never-ending process between the budget and the audit. It's a 12-month year-round dedication that goes into it. So very pleased with the budget process this year. It seems to just get more and more streamlined and kind of how we're doing things internally. Again, huge thank you to department heads and Nicole for putting all the work and effort into the budgets here. Nicole has a detailed PowerPoint. In the past, we've kind of gone through department by department in PowerPoint. So you've got your books here in front of you. The PowerPoint is in order with those books. So we'll be able to go through that. This is your workshop. So ask all the questions you want to ask. Stop us, refer to pages, refer to notes, changes that need to be made. Obviously, we've got plenty of time to do that. The plan right now is to do the public hearing and the adoption potentially on June 14th. So we have, 3 weeks to be able to go through and make changes and represent this as you see fit. So again, this is your budget. This is our recommended budget, but this is your budget when it's being adopted and passed on June 14th, because that's the day in which we pass it. So today is a great day to ask a ton of questions, very informal setting, to be able to fill through and pick through some of the details that are in here. So not a lot of changes, I don't think, from this year to the other. We've got some material changes, not a tremendous amount of volume changes, but we do have some material changes from this year to the other. And Nicole will go over volume changes, but we do have some material changes from this year to the other. And Nicole will go over that within the PowerPoint. So any questions before we get started on the PowerPoint? You good? Start us off.
Okay, well, right off the bat, we've got a couple page changes here. So this is within your budget books, sure. And that's just the starting position count was inaccurate. So we recognized that and corrected it. This is the expenditure summary, so this is another page. And they're not numbered in the book, and I apologize for that, because that will make this change out easier. But you don't have to actually take them out, just maybe have them as reference when we get to that area. But this one was including, it's the general fund summary, and it actually had water sewer in there too. So this one, this update was very important because it makes the comparisons apples to apples. So that's the second one. And then this one, we just had some new positions. This is the pay plan and salary grades. So we had some positions that had come into play that we didn't have in here. So we went through and looked and added those in. So this is the last schedule change that we have now. Go ahead and start up with our PowerPoint up here. So this is just the 22-23 budget for the town. So we are gonna start off. It's not moving, with general fund revenues. Okay, so we're all very familiar at this point with our top revenue sources as a town. So that's gonna be property tax, sales tax, occupancy tax, and then this category of other revenues. Other revenues, and we talked about it before, some of the larger components of other revenues, basically other revenues are all other revenues except for state collected, but as a whole, this other revenue category represents, let's skip on ahead. Other revenues is about 8% of the total budget. So we like to just define that a little bit because that's the next largest component of our budget, but it's made up of a lot of different revenues. So debt proceeds is one of them. As we go through, you will see capital equipment that we are proposing to finance through a debt issuance. So that's one component that you'll see as a revenue source or a funding source in the budget. And then the other component is sales and services. So this is going to be recycling revenue, Parks and Rec programs, and then permits and fees. Okay, this is a look at our pie chart for our revenue sources for the $12,800,725 per recommended budget for fiscal year 22-23. You can see property tax at 46%, that making up the largest percent of revenues. Sales tax coming in behind it at 20%, occupancy tax following that at 18%, and then as I said earlier, the next largest component is that other revenue category. Okay, so we're gonna take a look at the different revenue components and all the factors surrounding those in the recommended budget. So property tax, this year, you're all aware, we had the 2022 Watauga County tax revaluation. With that valuation, our tax-based growth saw an average increase of 35.4%. So I will just kind of reiterate that that is an average. That does not mean, obviously, that every taxpayer saw an increase in value of 35.4%. That just meant if you take all the properties and you divide by the number of properties, that's going to average 35.4%.
In Watauga County.
In Watauga County, correct.
Well, for
Well, Blowing
Blowing
Rock.
Rock, so yeah. so
35 is Blowing Rock?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
Counties was 40 something, I think. I've got that information. I can look that up. Yeah. Just Blowing Rock, city limits, 35.4%.
Thank you.
So our tax base changes every year. And we see the most significant changes during our reval years. And this chart is just to show you what that 35.4% looks like. And just for comparison purposes, prior years, how much growth we've seen. You can see that that is the highest growth that we've gotten since 02-03, when it was very major growth. And there was a year where the values regressed. You can see that 4.5% decrease in 14-15. So
The last property reval was an actual decline for Blowing Rock. So the 14 reval resulted in a decrease in overall average of 4.5% for the town. So since then, we've had just steady growth of about 1%, 1 year, 3%, 2% until we get to this year. But the big change from the first, for the big number to the second number was that reval time where it shot up and then went back down to 4.5%.
So when we talk about a reval year, one of the terms that comes up is revenue neutral. So revenue neutral is required by the general statutes to be calculated and publicized by each local government in North Carolina. So that basically is going to take into account your growth. It's going to take into account annexations that have happened and give you what tax rate you would put into place to generate the exact same level of revenues. Okay, so for us, that revenue neutral tax rate is 32 cents. Our recommended budget recommends a tax rate of 36 cents. So that's a 4-cent increase from the calculated revenue neutral tax rate. This is just showing the value of 1 penny on the tax rate based on our values. Okay, so you can see last fiscal year, a penny generated $122,039, and this year it will generate $165,265. This next slide, I think, is really neat and really insightful. It shows the actual revenue change that we're generating from the reval and the property tax rate change. So you can see, though we had 35% growth, and though we increased the tax rate by the 4 cents from the revenue neutral rate, that actually produces actual revenue change in property tax of 12.1%. This is a look at the surrounding municipalities' tax rates. These tax rates are what is currently in place. Usually around this time, we don't really know 100% what tax rates are being recommended across the area, so therefore we just kind of go from where things are today and where we know things are, because also those recommended tax rates could change when they're actually adopted. So this is just a look at where Blowing Rock stands compared to Boone, Seven Devils, and Beech Mountain. So you can see Blowing Rock's tax rate, our current tax rate is 43 cents for fiscal year 21-22. And that continued to be the lowest tax rate in the area. Boone with a tax rate of 44 cents, Seven Devils 51, and Beech Mountain 73.2. Looking at sales tax, is there any questions on property tax or any of that, please?
I would add at this point, so the county has proposed, so the county at this point is the revenue neutral at 28.8 cent, and they're proposing 31.8 cent. So they're proposing a 3 cent tax increase, which would make them the lowest tax rate in North Carolina. So the current lowest tax rate is Carteret County at 33 cent. They've got a revow coming next year. So the proposed tax rate for the county is actually would move them from 6th lowest to the lowest tax rate in all of 100 counties across the state at this point, based on their proposed rate.
Is that New Bern?
Carteret County?
No.
I don't think so. No, it's not either.
Nicole,
Yeah.
do you have, you get the property tax, do you have the number of properties?
I don't.
The number of, on the tax scroll, how many properties we have?
Right.
We can look it up.
I can look it up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say, I'm gonna be way off. I'm gonna say like 4,000 to 5.
Yeah, I was gonna say around
But I could
5,000.
be off, because we also have like tons of vacant lots. and so
Right.
forth. So, but that's kind of a good estimate.
All right, next we're going to talk about sales tax. So sales tax is distributed under the ad valorem method. We are estimating a 17% increase in fiscal year 21-22, so that's the current fiscal year over last year. And we are budgeting at a 5% increase for 22-23. This is a good time to mention kind of where our revenue estimates come from. We always start with the league. The league puts out a handy-dandy budget reference manual that lets us know what they're expecting in North Carolina. So we start with that, and then we actually use our experience as well. So, you know, if we're seeing better than where they think most North Carolina towns are going to end up for the fiscal year, we might bump that up a little bit, as was the case with sales tax. So we were running ahead based on our history of what the league thought that everybody would end up with end up at the end of the year. So for sales tax, the league estimate was an increase of 3.5%. We actually went with 5% based on our actual history as the town. So we can take a look here. This is a great chart. This shows us the history since we've been under the ad valorem distribution method. No, it's here somewhere. This column right here, that is the net incremental increase after we return the 70% to Watauga County. So over the years, these are the amount of increase that we've seen. So this year, for 22-23, we are budgeting $458,874 of additional revenue for the allocation method change when you factor in returning the funds to Watauga. And then you can see the history there.
So that's net.
That is net,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
That'd be what we would lose if, the tax was ever included.
Yeah, the middle column is what would go away, potentially.
What,
The middle column would be what we potentially would lose if they changed the method.
Okay, this is just a look at this current fiscal year. So we've collected through February, sales taxes 2 months in arrears. So at the time this chart was generated, we had collected through February. And the black areas up here is that net incremental increase. That's the additional revenues we're seeing under the ad valorem method net of the fee to Watauga. So that just kind of is a good depiction of this year. Okay, occupancy tax. Occupancy tax, so far this year, things have gone really great. We've had 23.5%. We had 23.5% fiscal year to date through March. That's an increase in collections. March itself was only up 1%. So that sort of got everybody's ears up in the air, and we are watching it. I feel like the TDA did a great job of realizing that this revenue source is economically driven, and there are some economic projections that we could see some bump down in the end of 22. I'm sorry. Yeah, the end of 22 and early 23. So in order to kind of plan for that and be able to keep an eye on that and effectively pull back if needed to, the TDA budgeted conservatively at a 3% increase over where we believe collections will come at the end of this year. And then in addition to that, they did come up with a contingency plan where they have set aside some funds in contingency to where if things are going good and we do think that, we will meet that 3% increase, those funds can then be allocated and used. But in the event that things tend to slow down, those funds are not, already being spent.
Nicole, when somebody asks how many people come to Rolling Rock, there's really no way to determine that, right? As I understand it, Asheville has a program that does that can do that. Tim, I think, sent you, and maybe both of you, some information about that. Is that something that we can get a handle on? Because we get asked all the time.
We had that in the park where every time a cell phone would travel by, it would ping a particular post, and it would only do it once. Okay, so it's not repeated.
Right.
So that was.
Yeah, we did it on parade days, and we had huge numbers, 25, 30,000 teens on Main Street within that. We know that, 2 million in 6% equals 33 million worth of hotel, motel, short-term rental revenue. So you can do some averages into that, kind of get some rough numbers on how many folks are staying overnight, but then you don't know the length of stays and that type of thing. So we've never been able to get an exact,
Is that important to you or to Nicole, or should it be important to us to know that or not?
I don't know how you would capture it accurately. I guess that's the hardest part, is figuring out how we would capture, because we have such an array of visitors, from overnight. I guess so asking the question would be, what are we looking to gather? Is that just overnight stays? Is that, just anyone and everyone that's in town, having the 321 business that rolls through, a lot of people just drive through, that type of thing. We did a, very, very informal study on the bathrooms during the month of October, to see that we had, X amount of people using the bathrooms to kind of help, identify what our needs were. We've never been able to clearly identify how many visitors we have in town.
Good, thank you.
At one time, the lodging group tried to get the hotels, there's an organization that will collect the data, but majority of the hotels in town would not give up the information. There was like 4 of us that participated in it. So
Okay.
it was kind of pointless to, because we had Chatola, I think our 2 properties did it, and either Meadowbrook or Green Park, so you didn't have a really good overview of what was going on. So,
Okay.
Yeah, we, from the TDA, so the discussion with the TDA was that, 2 fiscal years ago, the budget was $1 million. So now it's doubled within that, but there is some leveling that seems to be happening within, that's why the 3% number was picked. It does seem like we're starting to see more leveling out. The biggest unknown is, and Tracy talked about it a lot, is our rates have gone up so much that we don't know exactly how much new volume we have versus we have such an increase in our rates. I mean, so we have hotel rooms going for $400 and $500 a night on weekends here at certain times, where that may have used to been half that. And so a lot of this, and how much of this revenue is being driven by volume, and how much is it being driven by rates is a big unknown that's out there. And the economy and market, obviously drives the rates and what's being allowed. So I think you told the story of Meadowbrook and others on peak weekends were charging in excess of $400 or $500 a night. Your place.
yeah, I was gonna say, our 2 properties, the new owners have pretty much doubled the rates since they bought ours. So, I mean, you're talking in occupancy number that looks huge, but it's not really occupancy, it's just income.
Right.
So you're not really increasing the amount of people staying, you're just increasing the amount of money you're getting. So technically, you can rent half the amount of rooms and still bring in the same amount of money. So that's what you gotta
To
balance.
the previous grant,
Certainly.
that,
Sales tax.
that. And Doug rightly pointed out that the middle figure is what we could lose, is that what you said, Doug? Are we, my terminology is probably not your terminology. But we used to have, we didn't actually consider that as, that's gonna be every year, because the county can change that in a penny. Are we still doing that?
Yeah, here in a little bit, Nicole will show you what we're using. That's still considered one-time money, so to speak, so it's not being used to balance the budget operational, so we'll talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, the risk is always there. The county did not elect to change the method by April 30th of this year, which really puts another fiscal year in play. So we're 1 year ahead, always, so.
Don't they have to give 1 year's notice?
So if they change it by April 30th, it's not effective until the next fiscal year, the year after fiscal year. So I guess
Yeah.
so this budget's good, and technically next budget would be safe at this point. But that's always a yet to be determined decision by the county commissioners. But they did not elect to change it this year. By doing nothing, it rolls into the next year. So they elected to do nothing. But yeah, that's still being used. We'll show that, I guess.
I don't,
We might have
I don't think I
it
do.
here. We have it here, we don't have it here, but one time type money.
Okay, so occupancy tax. We talked about that 3% increase with the contingency plan. And this is just a little snippet. This is 5 years back. Just kind of looking at that history. You can see March in itself, so just below 1% increase for March. Fiscal year to date is up 23.5% after year increases there for the past 5 years. Okay, this is hopefully not too bad to see. This is the TDA funding of occupancy tax. This is not the full TDA budget. This is just a look at the 1/3 funding allocations that they are making or have proposed this fiscal year. They haven't completely adopted the budget yet. That's anticipated at the next TDA meeting. So you can see there, 70,000 allocated to the town to fund a park restroom attendant. This is an additional park restroom attendant, and that actually says portion, and that's not a portion, that's actually the full cost of that restroom attendant. They do fund a portion of the town's landscaping and beautification. That's just the total cost within the Parks and Recreation budget for landscaping and beautification. I will also say that in your budget book, when you're going department by department, when you see a little T, I've tried to indicate in there that that's TDA contributed or fully funded. 20,000 towards Christmas decorations, 13,000 towards sidewalks, 15,000 towards street maintenance, 145,000 towards Highway 321 landscaping. That is half the cost of our landscaping contract. Town Memorial Park maintenance and supplies. Town Center beautification, that's actually sanitation in the sanitation department. Memorial Park maintenance and repair. And then a contribution to the Memorial Park CIP. We're going to take a look at the end of the presentation of the Parks and Rec CIP. So that is a TDA contribution towards that, accomplishing those projects. Town streetlights, that's the power bill for streetlights, $46,250. That's actually just a portion of the cost of the streetlights. Directional signage for downtown, $61,603. The TDA, and as part of the, help me with the name of it, Roger Brooks study, they would like to fund the design of directional signage for the downtown. So that is setting aside funds for that. We don't have the actual cost in hand for that yet, but that is, Tracy got some estimates, I think, and that's where that amount came from.
Is that design only?
That is design only.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm. Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. No, this is not design, actually. This is for the actual signs themselves, because that discussion took place, and the TDA is actually budgeting out of the 2/3 side for the design, and then the actual infrastructure would come from 1/3 funding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They looked at it as being marketing, so the overall design and logistics of that plan would be 2/3 money, which we all kind of felt like that made more sense. And then the asset piece, the signage themselves would come out of the 1/3 piece
Okay.
within that. So Tracy did receive a quote on the design and implementation, which is in the 2/3 piece. This is, I won't say a plug, but this was kind of the number that was left over because we don't know how much the actual
Yeah.
signage is going to be. It'll be north of this, we just
Yeah.
don't know what that's going to be yet. But
Right.
this is kind of helping us balance, and the thought here was to put it in reserves until we know what that is, and then what the difference is, we'll figure out then.
Then the Brom parking facility, that is debt service on the parking facility. There are 3 years remaining on that debt service. Kiosk of 15,000, that would be replacing the kiosks that are, there's 2 of them, one in front of Memorial Park and one at the American Legion parking facility. Special events downtown shuttle, that's 3,000 towards the 4th of July shuttle, and whatever else special events that's used for. I don't know what y'all are used for. Christmas. And then the town calendars, TDA town calendars that the TDA does, 5,000 towards that, and reimbursement for town overhead, and admin. Those are basically the allocations made towards town staff time for TDA functions, like we handle their payroll, accounts payable, their general ledger, and meetings and things like that. Parks and Rec special events, they contribute 28,500 towards that. So our total down there balances with the top figure of 666,768.
Nicole, can somebody talk about the restroom attendant? It seems like an awful lot of money. Can somebody describe the duties of what takes place with that?
Yeah, so In the 70,000, correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah.
there's a portion that was there last year to help contribute towards Becky that works Monday through Friday, cleaning the bathrooms. And then the TDA discussion was actually hiring a full-time person that would work more than likely Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 10-hour days that would just be cleaning bathrooms, emptying trash within the park, Main Street. And I say bathrooms, so you have Memorial Park, you have Brom, you have the school bathrooms on the weekends, and you have Devant as they travel around. And so the TDA had discussions about that being a full-time position, because we do struggle, and we've struggled for a couple of years now, or more than a couple of years, with the volume we have in keeping part-time help, especially younger part-time help, just that being their sole responsibility. So the biggest increase in that 70 from last year, and I don't remember what last year's number was now, is it 15 or 20? Is a full-time position and benefits. So they're paying for the whole gamut for that person within that. So it's, when we talk in a few minutes about personnel and payroll, you have that position in there, but it's TDA funded. And that was a discussion that the TDA board had at their last meeting, is really wanting to put emphasis on keeping the park and the bathrooms clean with full-time help within that. So obviously that'd be on town payroll, the TDA funded through that, is what the discussion was.
Does that fall under Memorial Park maintenance and repair last year?
No,
It's salaries, so it would be in, I think last year it was seasonal salaries, so, yeah.
Is there any way that we can get that broke down? I'd like to see sometime, I was gonna ask that when we got the employees, the actual pay and the benefits.
yeah, so we have, because we haven't hired for that position, so we don't, so it's considered grade 1, and so the minimum on that's $32,780, which is about $15 an hour. That's a grade 1. So we I don't know if we plugged it in at, maybe around that same price, but we have not done the hiring for that position yet.
I mean, 'cause I was looking, if you did that and you got 70, then you're laying 40,000 on the benefits, and I don't think the benefits are that high.
No, it's not. So we did have,
So last year, there was 25,000 contributed towards the part-time position. So this year's going to fund,
So that's actually two positions, a
It's two
full-time
positions.
and a part-time covered by the 7.
it's like 1.5 positions. So the
Okay.
70,000 is 1.5 positions. So not,
When you mentioned full-time, you just.
yes. Yeah, so so the 25 last year was just a number that came up, I guess, to pay
for
for
part-time.
part-time within that. So
So basically, yeah, they're paying for 1.5. There's 2 full park attendants, but the TDA is paying for 1.5. And it is salary and benefits of 1, and then half.
So I think a good breakdown would be, 32,780 is our grade 1. So if you did that times 2, give or take, let's say that's 70,000 plus benefits is about 30% of that. It's probably 90-ish thousand, 2 positions, and they're paying 70 of that. So they're paying a little bit more than 1.5 of those positions.
And we will talk about overall salaries and the changes there in just a little bit. All right, in our other revenues category, ABC revenues are in there as well. And I wanted to talk about this one because we do have an update. Shane just attended the ABC board meeting and came back with good news that for this fiscal year, we will be receiving, for next fiscal year, 22-23, we will be receiving approximately $50,000 more than what was planned when the budget was first recommended and put together. So we'll make that adjustment. This is the time when little things shake out, and we will be truing up that number now that we know what the ABC store is budgeting. In addition to that, they are anticipating an additional $300,000 to be given in the beginning of next fiscal year that was additional profits from this fiscal year. It's a little confusing. It would
July or
be
August.
around July or August. And then they anticipate that same amount again for the following year, because again, during their budget process, they've done that planning, and that's what they're anticipating. So we kind of did some planning on that amount and are hoping to be able to, because when we look at the CIP, you will see that we did push out the North Main Sidewalk project, but we're hoping, that's just a project on the table that those fundings would be good to pair for, and the timing works out good. So just something to kind of be thinking about and keeping on the radar. I don't know if you have anything to add on that, Shane?
Yeah, so the ABC board met, their accountant was present and talked a lot about the current year they're in, so the 22 year, the one that's coming up, ending next month. And so far, this year, they've already distributed more than what they had anticipated, but they believe they will have another $300,000 to distribute after the end of the year. So they'll have to conduct their audit, which normally happens in July, early August, and then at that point, they'll write a check to us, which is pretty typical. I think that usually comes like late August or something, or September to us. And what, as of right now, based on current revenues, is they're 6 weeks out from ending the year, they believe that will result in an additional $300,000 that we've not budgeted for. If they take that same thought process into next year as they're doing their budget, they believe that potentially is there as well. On top of that, they went ahead and upped their quarterly distribution from the 84 by $50,000. So that's $50,000 more already that we don't have in this budget operationally. And then another $300,000 potentially on top of that is what they're saying, but that would not be paid out other than twice a year. So they would pay that out normally at the mid-year point and then the half-year point. And we've used that recently for like crosswalks, and we've used it for the park, and we've used it for some other things. As those projects have come up, we've been able to use that ABC money for that. So there's some of that discussion that will come up later in this presentation about maybe how, because some's known and some's a little unknown as of right now. But that being said, there's big numbers out there from the ABC story that we didn't plan on.
Correct me if I'm mistaken, but the ABC funds revenue normally has to be earmarked for public safety or health and safety well-being. Is that correct? Or can it go towards?
Yeah, technically no. So the ABC board meets, I think, and likes to help put it towards things. They recommend.
So they can stipulate where the money's.
They can. They recommend it.
They recommend.
Technically, there's no general statutes or anything that does that. So we in the past have utilized it for certain things like the SRO and some other expenses like that. In the scheme of things, it all goes into the same checking account and gets distributed back out. On the ABC board side, now their expenditures, and Doug knows this from working there, before they distribute to us, they only have a certain list of things they can spend money on. They physically writing checks for the DARE program, a lot of law enforcement, anything to do with alcohol awareness, abuse, that type of thing. And there's that piece on their side. And then once they distribute it to us, there's not technically any guidelines that we have to follow. But in the past, we've utilized it for certain things.
And there is actually, this slide represents that amount that is not designated towards law enforcement, but there is an additional line item that is designated towards the law enforcement budget and just helps fund their overall budget. Okay, some fee changes. This is in our other revenue category. So these are fee changes that will affect that revenue source, that 8% of our overall budget. And they are all Parks and Recreation fees. So Parks and Rec, it was pretty fun for me. I got to be a little part of their fee evaluation, and it was really cool. They did a great job. And this first fee that they're recommending changing is the pool pass fee. So going to season passes per person versus how many people are in their family. And it was a complicated thing. And when you work the numbers, you actually come out better. It's simple to understand. It does save some families money, but it ends up generating more funds for the town, and it also is comparable. They checked with Watauga County, I think, and those rates are comparable. So it's a really great plan. I got to see it, and I feel great about it. but this is what they have for residential taxpayer fee, and then the non-taxpayer fee would go to $35 per person for a season pass. No longer that season or monthly rate, it's just a full season pass, and then a $55 per person non-taxpayer fee. So, then we have the facility rental fees. So on the facility rental fees, they are proposing eliminating the deposit. This is how it exists today. So eliminating a deposit, they did say, I questioned that. I questioned that. And they said, you know what? We don't ever keep a deposit. They're like, usually everything is taken care of, and they really haven't had a situation where they've had to keep a deposit often at all, I think, if ever. So they felt good about that, and this is what they are proposing. I think that they highlighted that they would like to only do half-day rentals by request only, so really try to stay away from the half-day rentals. I think there's scheduling issues with that sometimes, but they will accommodate if that's necessary. And then again, these fees, I believe, were compared to other facilities that were comparable. And you're basically doubling the rate for the full day versus the half day as you go down the facilities. Okay, looking at the expenditure side of things, unless there's any questions on the revenue side of things for the general fund.
The ADC building, the actual building, that's not in their budget, correct? As a town-owned property, or it is?
Town-owned.
It's not town-owned.
No, it's, the only way the town gets it back
Yeah.
is if it was ever sold. If it was ever not an ABC store anymore, and they sold it, the profit would go to the town of Roaring Rock. Other than that, it's owned and kept up by the Roaring Rock ABC board, whoever sold it.
Yeah, so they do their own maintenance and repairs, and we don't pay for any of that.
Who owns the building?
They technically own the building. The ABC board is responsible for that. We would receive it back because we're the only entity that's ownership entity of that. But it's all the maintenance and
Everything comes out of their
comes
budget?
out of the budget. Christmas lights, all that stuff. They have repairs. We do go down there, public works and landscaping from time to time to help out with minor things that they need assistance with. I know we helped last year with some Christmas lights. We helped with the pond from time to time within that. But all the major, they have their own landscaping. They have their own contract. They have their own typical repairs, maintenance, that type of thing. But it's written, and that's the same with all ABC stores. So whoever their designated entity is. So some have county and town.
Right.
Ours is only the town. The building would revert back to the town if they ever were to shutter, which would, we would be responsible for making that decision.
How does it show up on the tax rolls? I'm
I
going down a rabbit hole, I know.
don't know the naming of it. I think it's ABC board something entity on it. It's non-tax paying. It's
Yeah.
exempt, but I don't know how it's listed on there
Okay.
within that. Now, saying all that, you all here are responsible for that board and for that building. I mean, you all can unravel that if you ever wanted to, which I don't think you would, but if you ever wanted to make that decision to do something different, it would start here with this board. So you technically are the owners of it.
Well, I was just
Your
trying to figure
point.
out where it shows up in here,
Yeah, so it's,
if it does.
so in the audit, it's a component unit. So in our audited statements, it shows up as being a component unit of the town in the first couple.
They have their own separate tax ID and operating system over there, if that helps. I mean,
Okay. Yeah.
they're
it does.
separate, but like Shane was saying, a component unit.
Understood.
So they're their own separate entity, but you all are in charge you were in charge of setting them up, you were in charge of putting the board together, and the same thing would happen if you ever unwound it. But technically, they're their own separate entity, governed by the board that you appoint, and
Got it.
everything falls within that board.
And then they're really governed by the state.
Yeah.
So Sam, are you saying that the town owns the dirt underneath the building?
You technically own the dirt in the building if you ever want to unline that, but the entity itself, the One Rock ABC board entity owns the building and dirt. I mean, that's, so.
Okay, thank you, sorry.
All right, so rolling on to the.
Yeah, any other questions on revenue stream so far? I mean, that's a lot to take on.
Expenditures is even more though.
Yeah. So,
Now, we got the money,
Yeah,
what we do with it.
That's, yeah.
so we do it.
so revalve, property taxes, you know, either PR wise went down or went up, whichever way you want to look at that, right? So went from 43 to 36 is what we're proposing. Really, it's 32 to 36, technically within that. Sales tax, we're keeping a 5% increase. TDA is 3%. So very conservative budgeting across the board, I think, on those larger items. Overall, you know, growth across everything that you're seeing, but just kind of taking a moderate approach towards the budget is what Nicole put together here. So
So you're using the lead for the sales tax. What are they using for the occupancy?
They don't give you anything for occupancy. I think it's because occupancy tax is very location specific. That one moves more than sales tax. So they don't give anything for that. They give it a projection for video programming, state collected, basically all state collected.
Well, I guess my question was, you guys are using the lead to start with your sales tax. What's the TDA starting with their occupancy?
So Tracy, you know, attends your conferences, your statewide conferences that happen. I think the statewide conference was in late March, late March.
Yeah.
And they discussed their kind of the tendencies of what they're believing. And from what he shared with the TDA board, is they fully expect 22 into 23, there's going to be some plateauing across local tourism. And maybe we're seeing that now. Maybe that was just February, March was just a little blip. But Tracy did share with the board that they were expecting kind of the day tripping, weekend trips to start leveling out a little bit at 22, 23 as people may start traveling internationally. But there's a lot of unknown there with gas prices, flights, uncertainties, potential war, there is war, the current war that's going on. He mentioned that all during the TDA. There's so much uncertainty right now. And then when you get, when you threw COVID in, he shared last year and this year, there's still many communities that haven't recovered from COVID. And so their TDA numbers still haven't recovered from where they were in 18 and 19, where we've doubled, essentially. So it is a difficult thing when you're looking community to community within that. But he attends these conferences and overall kind of looks at what they think state and regional and, within the continental United States, what may be out there. And his projections were there's going to be some leveling there. There was a spike, right after doors opened with COVID, and that's maybe starting to come to a more level.
Any more discussion on the 55th?
So talked about it during the TDA meeting a little bit, and you can jump in. You may know more here than I do. The TDA directors met with Representative Pickett and went over their thoughts of the 1/3 versus 2/3, the 50-50. Originally we had kind of thought here of a proposal where you keep it exactly how it is right now, but then you're allowed to use your fund balance towards certain things. From that, and I say the TDA director, so this is Watauga/Boone's TDA director, Seven Devils, Beach Mountain, Avery County, us here with Tracy, and that may have been all. But the areas in which Representative Pickett represents. And from that conversation, he then went back, Representative Pickett went back to his colleagues, and I think there was some resistance met with some of the lobbying groups, right? Some of the hotel and motel groups of the state, and said you really need to get more than just you in your area. And their suggestion was for Representative Pickett to try to gather some other colleagues in West North Carolina that would be willing to go in as well, versus just he maybe doing a local deal within that. So the last I heard about 2 weeks ago was that was kind of where that was going, that there was some discussions at the state level with other representatives about maybe other communities wanting to follow suit with changing the current funding allocation that's out there. Seemed like, and I don't know the individuals at the state level, I think they're, very, powerful entities down there, especially with the hotel motel groups, and just really felt like that until you got more than just Watauga County or Avery County wanting to do this, then it wasn't really worthwhile putting the bill together, because there may not be the votes there to make that happen. It's kind of, is that fair to not put you on the spot? But
No,
do you know more
that's-
than that? Okay.
Yeah, that's a fair synopsis.
Seemed like just our little area may not be enough to get that moving along, is what their discussions were. But, and I haven't talked to Tracy about it in the last couple of weeks, but I believe that it's still in that process. I don't think anything's gonna happen, this year, this budget year or anything. It would be,
I think it'll be a long session, the next long
so
session. I don't
next
think
year,
anything
if
will
anything
happen.
happens. So nothing in the current, so everything in the budget's still 2/3, 1/3, all that stuff's still in place. And I will say, not to just continue adding on, the TDA did put a formal fund balance policy into place at their last meeting, which was great, or meeting before last, but now they have the 50% fund balance policy, similar to the towns, where they're looking at expenditures and setting back 50% of fund balance, in 2/3 and 1/3, to be able to have some contingency there within that. So, in case COVID or anything like that ever, pops its head up again, so.
All right, expenditures. So this is our overall expenditure look, pie chart, kind of visual representation of where the expenditures are and how those look when you're kind of looking at it as a whole pie and what percentages represent. So we're going to talk about every department in this pie. So we'll look at it in greater detail. This as a whole is the 12.8 $725 million budget. Okay, this chart is really very helpful. So that's the one that I sent out a revised one of. This is for general fund only, and this I've added on the percentage change so that we can kind of see. So you can see salaries and personnel as a whole, those increased 17%. We're going to dig in, so we'll find out what all that's about. Operating and maintenance has increased 29%. That's gas, that's materials, supplies, that's operating cost, less salaries. So that really is one of the main areas where we're seeing increases this year, which is what the world is seeing increases in. It's really kind of no different for us. Looking at capital outlay and other, you're going to see in the other category, those are transfers. The other represents primarily transfers for capital. So we'll take a look at those in greater detail as we go through the different departments. And then we have debt service increasing 12% for a total budget increase of 22%. So these are the different areas that make up our increase when you're looking at them kind of helicopter view. All right, looking at the first category, the personnel and salary changes that are proposed in this budget. This budget proposes a 2.5% cost of living adjustment. That's an increase in base pay for all employees that are not within their 6-month probationary period. There's the final adjustment to the pay scale. We started this process last year of moving our lowest grade. We cleaned up our grades because we found that we weren't using all of the grades. We really started, I think it was at grade 6. So we removed the unused grades, and then we started to move. We moved halfway towards a $15 an hour rate of pay for that grade 1 position. So we did half last year. This puts into place the other half. We recognized that if we only made the changes to the grade and we didn't move the people that were in the grades, we were gonna move people down the pay scale, which you don't want to do. So we did increase everyone's pay to keep them in their same position in the grade as the grade moved to accomplish the $15 an hour minimum wage. So that resulted in an average salary increase of 7% per year just for the minimum wage change. That's average. So, you take all the employees and you add up all of their percentage increases and divide it by the number of employees, you're gonna see an average of 7% for this year. As I said, over the 2 years, that is 14% as an average. Okay, there are 2 additional positions recommended. One is a finance and accounting support specialist for town hall, and one is the park attendant we spoke about earlier. That one is fully funded for that additional position. There is a reclassification also recommended in the budget that's not an additional position, but rather a transfer of a position. It's Thomas Steele, moving him, basically he would move out of Parks and Rec to central government as IT for the town. Okay, this continues to fund the SRO position. This continues to fund the 5% 401k for all general and law enforcement employees, so all employees. And something that is affecting personnel and salaries that is not a purposeful change, but something that does affect us, is we have had a 14% turnover rate the past year. So we've had 10 positions turn over. So what happens when that happens is when you're rehiring at market rate. So sometimes you realize an increase in personnel costs because of that. Those were all existing positions. Now, there were also 2 additional positions added mid-year. Those are the dispatchers. Okay, and so that's salaries. And do we have any questions, or you look like you want to say something?
Yeah, so, yeah, I was gonna say, to recap with our grades, the thought process that we put into it last year, we started with our first grade, and the goal was to get that grade at the lowest possible hiring range at $15 an hour. And so that's the 32.70.80. That's actually higher than 15 an hour because we have the COLA that's mixed into that as well. And so from that, we started there. So what does it take to get that position to the $15 an hour was a thought process last year. And we took that and divided it by half, whatever that percentage was. And I want to say that was a big percentage. That was about 20%, maybe a little bit more, 22%. We divided that by half. And then we went down the grades and we dropped it 1 percentage point as we went down the grades. And so by the time you got to, grade 15, 16, 17, 18, which is our highest paid positions, department heads, they were receiving obviously much, much less. And so I think they were around 4% or so overall, plus the COLA that was included in that. And that was described last year as kind of the thought process was, in order to not have compression, we started with the lowest paid position to get them above $15 an hour, and then went down 1% as we went down the grades until you got to the highest paid positions. Obviously, they would not be receiving, should not be receiving that type of an increase as well. But the overall goal was to get the lowest paid positions, which for us is our landscape and facilities and park attendants. And then we go into grade 2, which is public works technicians, sanitation, et cetera, within that. But that was kind of that general thought process last year that we described and put into place.
Were there any positions requested by departments that were not filled?
Yes. Starting with the police department, and we can talk about it now. So we have applied through the Governor's Highway Safety Grant for, do we end up going for 2 or 4?
The application's for 4, but realistically, we asked for more, hoping we could get some.
Get what you get.
So 2 would be the number that we would like.
And that grant is the staggering grant. So the first year, it's 80% of the salaries, benefits, and vehicles, guns, all of the, it's everything, the full package. 80, 60, 40, 20, nothing by year 5 and beyond. We believe there's going to be some knowledge of that grant sometime in June, and it would be funded starting in October or November. So that's an unknown, so it's not in here right now. There's been discussion, you know, whether or not we want to include additional officers even if we don't get that grant. And so I think that's a discussion, that's one of the big discussions for today to start kind of hashing out. We currently don't have that in there. But I think Chief will tell you, he did request two officers, grant or not grant, to be put into the mix of things within that.
You know, probably really good to consider that moving forward, continue considering the possible additional ABC funding we're going to receive. To throw those in the budget, and if the grant comes through, that money can be diverted somewhere else.
Did we talk at the retreat that these two officers, were they gonna be dedicated to mostly up on 321? Did I understand that right?
That would be the bulk of their activity. Is if positions are grant funded, there's certain approved activities that they could be engaged in, so we would have to monitor that as closely as possible. So yes, that would be the plan.
I thought that's what we had talked about.
It is, so the discussion point for today is going to be to give some thought to, currently, the police department is as it is currently, so no additional positions in there. If the grant comes through, obviously that couldn't mean additional positions, whether that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and that would be for us to decide at that point. Or if we want to go ahead and move forward, even without the grant, of adding additional positions.
And then we could say, okay,
That's correct. Yeah, we put it in the budget.
If
So
they-
use ABC money,
Yeah.
and stipulate how they're
The way the grant works, and let me just make sure I'm clear about my understanding of how it works now. There are certain approved activities that we may be reimbursed for the time that they're participating in those approved activities. If those officers are engaged in activities that aren't on their approved list, we may not be reimbursed for that amount of time. So when we say 80%, that would be a maximum reimbursement. It could be a little less. And an example of that would be if the officer's driving down the highway and there's a vehicle sitting beside the road that's out of gas. We certainly don't want our officers to drive by that person and assist them and say, oh, it's not a grant activity. So we certainly don't want that. So the state, should they audit our records, and we are working under the assumption that they will, we could be docked, an hour's worth of time because that officer stopped to assist that motorist who was out of gas. So that's the way it works.
And
Don't flag him down and run out of gas.
and the grant funding
bottom left
sunsets,
corner,
right?
they don't have that.
I'm sorry,
The grant funding sunsets over,
I think it's a 3-year period. Is it 3 or 4?
I think you said.
4.
That's for
For
80,
the 4th
60,
year, we
40,
get
20.
20 though. I think the 4th year, we actually receive no funding, but we're required to continue on our own to fund that position. So
After the fourth year?
after the 4th year, the town can keep those positions or decide to eliminate those positions.
Now, these dollars we see, 2 people, does that include the cars?
Yeah.
So we project, I think our number is about $80,000 when we add everything in, advertising, equipment, that type of thing. So each new officer, fully equipped with a vehicle amortized, we believe is around $80,000 per position. That's salary, benefits, and amortizing their equipment that's needed within that. So each position's around $80,000 to add to the overall budget.
Is there a stable reason we had a 14% turnover in employees last year?
Of the 10, we had 3 deaths, so that makes down to 7. So unfortunate, obviously, with that. And then we had 4 or 5
The
that
police we had 3 that turned over, I think, in a short period of time.
To get more money or something? So,
Yeah,
And then 2 on the trash truck, or 3 on the trash truck for the others. Yeah, and then we had We had a Linda retirement, which was the year before, I guess that was it. Tammy Honda. Holly, that was the one, we had one resignation with Holly. So I would say our typical two, which has always been sanitation and police, I mean, that's kind of the most common turnover areas. That accounts for, I think, 6 of the 10. Holly, and then the 3 deaths that we had.
Is that the only positions that were requested and not?
We had one in landscaping that Corey had requested to cut down on the seasonal side, so reducing the seasonal mowing to add a full-time position. The discussion there was they're having difficulty hiring just in general at that position, on anything to mow grass with it. We did have Tyler's, that's right, we did have one Tyler's position turned over as well within that. So we've not been able to hire back for Tyler's position. There's kind of a thought process there right now, moving our weekend individual maybe over to that position currently within that.
Chief, if there wasn't the grant, would you be seeking these officers?
Yes.
Okay.
I think the question that Pete brought up earlier, the issue is a really important one, and it's difficult for us trying to figure out how many people we deal with on a daily basis. You know, there's formulas out there that help you mathematically figure out how many police officers you should have based on the number of people. You know, based on our census population, obviously, we're overstaffed, but we all know that we're dealing daily
Your
with
effective
many more people. The effective population is much, much higher. So, and we did that, we went over there.
I was gonna say, in retreat, didn't you say?
Yeah.
That was, we were too short in retreat.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Shane.
So I mentioned ABC, so we know so we receive quarterly distributions from ABC. That's pretty much guaranteed money. We know that's going up 50,000 more than what's in this right now. So that's not 80, but that's getting close to that. The one-time money that ABC, and it's really two-time money because they usually do it twice a year, that's the additional 300,000. We've not accounted for that within this, whether that's, CIP driven, because there's still some unknown, or if there's a portion of it that could go towards additional position, that type of thing, still yet to be discussed within that. We know we're 50,000-ish to the good right now that we haven't really allocated within the current budget that's in here.
Yeah, you when you're talking about revenue sources for staffing, you really want to look at what's going to keep coming, because you're going to have to keep funding that position. So, when the ABC, if we were to use the ABC one-time money, or like Shane said, two-time money, we have to be prepared for how we're going to cover it when that runs out. We typically would not identify that for a continued cost.
Reducing debt service, potential loan, so maybe the loan's not as big as what we anticipated, as we use it to buy capital with. We've done that type of stuff in the past as well. I mean, it still adds to the budget. It just depends on how you want to earmark it, so to speak. Within that is what we talked about. So salaries, mentioned the market rate that's in that, continues to be an ever-changing thing. So as we've hired individuals back into positions, we've absolutely hired individuals that we feel like are gaining us some qualifications as we've done those hirings each time, especially within the admin department that we have here. But that's coming with a little higher rate each time within that, because as a year passes or whatever the case may be, it seems like we're dealing with an ever-changing market. So a position that may have been 35,000 2 years ago is maybe 40,000, 42,000 now with what's out there. And we've gotten a real taste of that, and I think everybody has, when you put out the notice and you don't get any applications in, and then you realize that you've got to figure out what the new market rate was in that. So this is the one that's an ever-changing one in this world right now, of how we keep up with the times. I think we got ahead of everybody last year with phase one, and then we've seen Boone and others try to jump on and catch up. The county and some others have done that as well. So I still think we're there. I mean, I still think we're ahead of the curve, so to speak, but it's an ever-changing market with inflation and other things that's out there, which so. What other questions with salary and payroll?
Shane, on the SRO position, do I remember something about the county funding other municipalities to some degree, or?
So the county doesn't fund other municipalities, the county, so all the SROs in the county, all the SROs other than ours is now part of the sheriff's department, is that right, chief? So Boone used to have one that was in the high school, I think they used to have
That
one.
position, I believe, is funded through the school board.
Yeah, so all the other positions are county funded, except for ours. And the conversation back in those days continues to be the same conversation. We've been offered a part-time SRO, and that still seems to be where that was originally. What the conversation was that Blowing Rock was going to have a rotating SRO. So that was once every 3 or 4 days. And this council, or some of this council, and yourself continues to want to have a 5-day a week person, full-time SRO, versus the rotating ones. I know some of the schools are still dealing with just 1 day a week, or maybe even 2 days a week at the most on some of that process. We did request it from the county again.
Right.
So we did formally request that. We did formally request the 24/7 ambulance service. And those were denied. I sent y'all that information, correspondence from the county on that funding. So,
Like, at one time, we even requested that they reimburse us for maybe 1 day a week of the SRO. We pay for 4 days and they pay for 1. You know, that would be the average of what an SRO funded by the county would be every year.
we did that 2 or 3 budgets ago. We were denied that as well. That's correct.
And during the summer when school's out, does Officer Swift, he
Yeah,
transfers over to a regular?
Right, and last year we had him, of course, in the summertime, they try to schedule all their SRO training in the summer, which is smart. COVID messed that up some, but we, last year during his other times, we moved him to sort of a downtown position. So he spent most of his time primarily downtown during our busy tour season, and that worked out pretty well.
Yeah, the timing of that worked out pretty well when we were wanting more people, mask and that type of thing, so.
So he's downtown with the businesses and stuff in the summer, which is a good thing.
Go ahead, Nicole.
All right. The expenditures, looking at general government, these are all the departments in our general fund. So this first department is comprised of governing body, admin finance, and central government. So some of the things that we have going on here, we cover insurance premiums, general liability, and workers' comp within the central government department. This budget, as we spoke about earlier, continues to fund the 70% ad valorem versus per capita sales tax percentage back to the county. It funds technology infrastructure and IT support staff position. We continue to have an allocation for the library of $2,000. And then a new finance position of finance and accounting support specialist within the admin finance department. There's also, as I mentioned, well, this was kind of covered in the white area, but it's the transfer of the IT director position to central government. That position will be kind of like floating and helping all departments, so we put them in central government. It also covers video and camera equipment upgrades and Wi-Fi router replacements. Again, the directional signage plan funded by the TDA, or at least portionally funded by the TDA at this point. Information kiosks that are TDA funded. And then there are 1888 museum upgrades of chimney and floor upgrades. Town hall improvements, we allocated $10,000 there primarily for walkway improvements in front of town hall. We'd like to pour that solid to where, there's a lot of loose rocks and things that happen there. And then some restroom improvements. Facility study of $60,000, that was talked about during retreat. And then this also includes year 1 of 2 comprehensive plan update Usually that's divided into 2 years, so 50,000 would basically cover the first year of the comp plan update.
What is the 2,000 for the libraries? What does it go to?
I don't know on their end. I mean, they request it each year, and we've always given that allocation to them. So I'm not sure on their end, their budget or what the 2,000 you utilized for.
Okay.
We could request that if you wanted to put it down.
Just curious.
I'll give you $2,000 not to ask.
Time for the sun.
I've gone around and working with them for Art the Park, so been there, done that. Fought over the sidewalk, everything else.
Sue Sweetie handles that.
So we do receive requests, one being from the Historical Society on 1888. They requested, I think, $26,500 to repair the chimney and the floor. That's included in there as well. That come from, I guess Tom sent that to us, maybe Tom O'Brien sent that to us, maybe with what that was, they were asking for there. The facility study, that's a ballpark number, from McGill, but that was to look at this whole block, is what we were thinking there, what that may look like and how we can better utilize the space that we have in all of the areas, including this room, potential future offices, that type of thing. The walkway piece in the front, somewhat new. We continue to have rocks come up front here. It looks good, so I don't want to ruffle a lot of feathers, but we probably do need to pour that at some point. It's ADA, it's an issue. We've had some people stumble out there with cutting canes. It comes up each year when we have voting. Now we've moved voting over, but it technically doesn't meet the standards with the way that it's in the current shape that's out there with the rock that's placed out there. So that was a thought process as well. We keep pushing it back down and trying to mortar some of that back into place, but we do have, we've had a couple of complaints from folks with, especially with canes and things like that in the past few years within that. But I think those are the major changes that we had. And then Kevin, planning, that's $50,000 towards $100,000. It only costs to do the 2024 comprehensive plans. We'll go ahead and set money aside this year and half next year to start that 2024 comprehensive plan update.
Does that get contracted out, or?
And that's another ballpark. Last time we went with Benchmark, and that's,
Right.
yeah, so that's kind of the updated number from them of what that would look like. That's a year-long process. It starts next year.
All right, public buildings and grounds. I'll just pause at the end of each, and if there's any questions, we can grab those. But public buildings and grounds, there are facility, basically maintenance and repair items within the public buildings and grounds department. Tree planting is within there. And then some holiday decorations. Those are basically town hall decorations, kind of what we do out front of town hall. Not the major everywhere town decorations within that department. And then we also have debt service funding. We have emergency services building, debt service funding. We're on parking facility, again funded by the TDA. And 75% of the public works building renovation project funding is paid for out of the general fund. The remainder is paid for out of the water sewer debt service funds. So any questions on public buildings?
I do have a question on the, in 2021-22, we did approve the $12,000 for the Edgewood Cottage Museum. Did they utilize all that or any of it?
No, I don't know. They did. Okay, they did
We,
on
the
the
building
staining.
just got caulked and restained, pressure washed, caulked and restained. Edgewood,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
We had some money in there for 1888 to put new guttering and have it painted, but since there was other things they wanted to fix first, they asked us to not do that until the chimney and all the other could be completed. So,
I'm worried if we don't do something with that chimney, somebody's gonna get hit in the head walking down.
Yeah, so it would be taking the chimney down, and I talked with, not Tom O'Brien, but,
Jim Crow,
Jim Kroll about, moving forward with getting that exposed portion taken down. I just talked to him last week about that, because it's getting worse, and so, at least the exposed piece, the brick's taken off the top because it could be a safety issue, so
Is that Edgewood or 1888?
1888.
Okay.
So that should be happening any day, I hope. We don't have to take it down.
Does
I would
that-
say, so, and we do have that, I know it's not up there, but we do have the Buxton property as part of the public building stat as
Yes,
well. So
yep.
that's 200,000, the payment number 2 of that, the 5-year deal with the Buxton property within that.
How about the property on 321 across from Food Line? What's our debt service there and the interest rate?
Debt service is 48,178. And,
That's yearly?
yes. What's that? Yeah, it was 48 a year for 10 years is what it is. So it's like 480, I think we're paying back. Yes.
What was that, 3%?
That's on
3%?
Maybe more like
3.09?
3%. within
I
that.
think it was
480.
the, that's on
3.09.
the page.
Yeah.
That's what we'll end up paying.
Yes.
We're not paying any interest on the other one.
We are not. No, that was 200 over 5 years, so $1 million for that property.
Various facility improvements, does that include town hall and some of the things?
It does not. So the 60,000 is in there for the facilities, but we have not set aside any monies to do any renovations, actual renovations. So we have study money in there, but we don't have renovation money. So and that's, I know, kind of weird. So we all know we continue to have bathroom issues here in town hall. We continue to have, need for more office space. And so, which one comes first, right? So do we do the study and then we move on, or do we try to fix the bathrooms? That's a pretty constant fight within town hall, I'll say that, so.
That falls under want or need.
Yeah, so,
This is
Yeah.
a need.
yeah, there's a need with our current bathroom facilities. We've been utilizing these up front here. But the overall bigger picture, and again, it's like which one comes first, the overall bigger picture is we're gonna need to reimagine the space.
Right.
And potentially other spaces as well when we
So
look
that
at
money's not
long-term.
in here.
It is not, because that's probably would be coming to you at a later date once we know numbers of what that may look like.
Right.
Actual renovation costs would be.
Right, I didn't know if you put anything in there.
We didn't put any reserves in, we certainly can, we didn't put any in within here.
Well, we believe that the 10,000 could do the walkway and also some public restroom in town hall upgrades.
Like new toilets and that type of
Yes,
thing. These
minor.
bathrooms, not those.
Correct.
There's no money in for,
Employee section.
But are the employees' restrooms inoperable?
they are.
Then I think we ought to get it fixed.
So that's the more difficult thing, so we've got ADA issues, we've got plumbing potential issues as well within that, so,
We do have the mayor and council getting older.
yeah. So, it's tricky, I'll say that. So can you put them back where they are right now is the debate of the day. You can't they can't be ADA accessible where they are right now. They're not. So then where do you put them? So if you move them somewhere else, you're taking up space that we don't currently have, because every other space we have, somebody's in it. So then you lose the space that somebody's in right now. Where do you put the people that, where do you put that person, or persons in this case? So again, that's where we're at with the crossroads of all this is, just doing bathrooms is
The issue
as
with
simple.
bathrooms, right?
It is. It's an old building, it's a slab. We've had it cambered. There's belief that a lot of that's settled, so you've got flat areas within that, causing issues. We've had some funny stories where, one's been using one and then it's come up on the other side.
The other thing, I think, with the way the code is anymore, any improvements made, it would have to be brought up to ADA accessible, and that is not 5 foot square room in there to get around a toilet or anything.
We're dealing with an old building that has some issues and logistical problems with it within that. So
So
we've
the money,
got a old, an office back here, when it rains hard enough, water comes in the door that's there, that's another issue. So we've got, if you want to add the list of things up, it's a pretty sizable list of what it looks like. I know David's looked at it and maybe looking at it now about how maybe you can lay things out differently.
Yeah, I'm doing a plan for John.
Okay. So but there's no money in here currently within that, so.
Shane, how long would it take Miguel to do the assessment study on the office space?
Probably 3 months.
I don't think we, all right, I'm not gonna get into the weeds.
But we may not need it. So the 60, here's what I'll say about that, is that maybe the 60 isn't used for that. Maybe the 60 is used, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's used for the study, maybe it's used for other things. We just there is a $60,000 number that we identified as being a facility study for the whole block within here, that we got a number from McGill within there.
There's also FEMA funds that were given because of the flooding that happened during, what was that, Isaac? They gave us funds, and we could, redo the flooring and things back there that need to be done, but it's all connected. So,
Yeah.
trying to not lose money, not spend money where you're gonna be doing something different right behind it is what we're dealing with.
So David, you're currently working on some drawings for John.
Yeah, I guess I'm not letting the cat out of the bag. Yeah, doing some, John and, I guess Shane and, Kevin had kind of come up with a plan which would give us an extra office back there, redo some bathrooms.
That would
and
help the
stuff.
bathrooms.
Yeah, and I don't think we need a study for the town hall piece of it, but it would be nice if we put some reserves back, not knowing what that's gonna cost, but put some reserves back, because that's an immediate need.
Yeah, I agree.
Right, ladies?
I think.
Well, and that's, we talked about a minute ago, ABC money, a lot of that one-time money could be used for things like that we're not anticipating. So we could absolutely utilize monies like that for renovations and one-time type thing.
I just feel like spending $60,000 on stuff that tell us what to do with our buildings, not very smart use of money. Particularly when we've got so much expertise and knowledge here, but know how to do the building or how to address office space or bathrooms or whatever it might be. It's just my opinion.
Charlie, that may be true, but, looking down the road, if you listen to what Shane is saying, whoever that smart person is, let's get them going now, because time moves along, and I understand the need of the bathrooms and everything, but there's a whole bigger picture here, and that certainly needs to be addressed.
Well, maybe so. I'm not going to get in the weeds, but I know where you're going with that. And I've heard that, and I've been mostly against it. That's neither there. I'm sorry.
So we absolutely can say $60,000 in the budget. We don't necessarily have to, we're not entering a contract or anything, if that's satisfying everybody. We can just have that number there.
We can build it out there.
What's that?
I think we're gonna have to build a little adjunct building.
Potentially, do we need to add on to a building? There's a lot there we don't know. We need office space, so that's number one. We need bathrooms, that's critical. So bathrooms are a need, and then we do need to try to gain some additional office space within this building. I would say the same within PD eventually within that too, and some of the things as they're doing. So there is some needs that we know that they're coming.
How deep is the sewer out there
In this building,
in the road?
not deep. 2.5. I would say 2, yeah, it's not a lot. There's not a lot of fall there. Yeah.
So you're going to have to build up, put a water closet on top.
There's been thoughts of pumping as an option. Potentially as an option with, it's in a slab, so that's difficult as well.
Sewer pumps be a problem on days like this.
To me, people.
Avoid at all costs if possible.
All right, in the police and fire departments, We continue to, again, provide the SRO funding for Blowing Rock School SRO officer. Continuing to fund dispatch, who was brought back into the town on 21-22. This budget, and we'll see that a little closer on the dollars in just a second. This funds replacement of 2 police vehicles, maintains the funding for the part-time parking enforcement. We know that paid parking is a topic going on right now, but where we all three, Chief and Shane and I, sat down and kind of thought that it would be best to wait until a plan was in place so that we could bring it to you as a budget amendment to, once we know the revenue sources and how we're going to expend it and how much, to bring that to you as a full package when it's ready. This also funds 2 dual band radios, just replacing those, and replacement of body and vehicle cameras. Continues to support the DARE program and Crime Stoppers contribution. And it also, on the fire department side, they are funding landscaping for the building. We are funding landscaping for the building, sorry.
So on the parking side, I was going to add exactly that. So essentially, if we move forward the way that we believe we're moving forward, we'll be setting up a separate fund for parking, and that would all come to you whenever we know things like how much we're charging, our partnerships, and how that's going to look. There's a lot to be determined there. I know Melissa and Doug are sitting on those subcommittees as well, and it seems to be coming closer to a consensus. But until we start knowing the numbers, we can't really start projecting what that's going to look like. And then overall, then how that implementation looks. Are we doing all that in-house? Are we hiring? That's all yet to be determined. So parking's going to be a much bigger conversation as we go into the year. And it's probably going to conclude at some point with Nicole coming to you with, setting up a new fund and essentially a large amendment to put all that into place of what that's going to look like. But we don't anticipate it looking like utilizing property tax revenue. It would be hopefully self-funding within that.
Enforcements in that, would be in that fund?
Yeah, the typical process is that it's all set up in the fund, so all the revenues and all the expenditures would be set up inside of kind of one fund within that. And again, is that outsourced, is that in-house? Those are still things to be determined within that.
Shannon, I've had several business people ask me if next year we start tearing up the street to put the water and sewer in, what's going to be the enforcement process, and, how's that going to affect the business owners?
Well, the goal with the project, and it's going to be a difficult one to say the least, is that we hope that we never have too much of a section torn up that it really plays much of a factor, we hope. When we were talking with Gil early on, Valdez was an example that was used where they had a 2-mile section of water and sewer line, and now Valdez is not one rock, but it was very much a 150, 250 feet sections at a time, buying and put back down afterwards, moving on. So there's going to be disruption throughout the process, but hopefully it's not so much of a length that we're ever dealing with anything that's more than X amount of spaces at a time within that. So, and then the timing of that, the project, good or bad, is going to be such a lengthy project, 12 to 15 months. The hope is, as well, is that we can accomplish the main section here during some of those less busy months, and we can focus on the residential sides of things during the busier months. So instead of closing down one lane at a time, the only time I think that we believe we'll have to close down 2 lanes is when we're doing taps and things like that. We may have to close them down periodically to go across, but other than that, we're hoping to be able to stay, westbound or eastbound the whole time within that. But there's going to be disruptions. It's going to be a lengthy process.
They know it.
We hope they know it. Yeah, Sunset was more difficult in a lot of ways because of the narrowness of Sunset. So at least Main Street, a lot more cars, but at least it's a little wider, so we can, because we are dealing with parking spaces as well, so we can hopefully, but it's still going to be a nightmare to deal with during that time.
Nicole, what happened to the 911 expense on the P&L or the budget?
We are no longer having to pay that because we brought dispatching house. So that cost went away.
So when
you say when I say went away, it changed to
okay.
where we pay for people versus a contract.
basically.
Okay.
Yeah, we added those two positions essentially mid-year or March to get them, and the 65 goes away.
Yeah, because it looks like 911, you think 911 dispatch from Watauga County. Because we're still in that with fire.
We will always be looking at that, yeah, so, and that's something good to point out, because it's been on the front page of the paper, that, Boone and Watauga County consolidated with 911 and non-911, so Boone no longer has either, is that correct, Chief?
That's my understanding.
And so, but prior to that consolidation, Boone actually was their own primary 911, so they did answer 911 calls. We haven't done that here in years.
Since 2012.
Yeah. So, we're just talking those non-emergency calls that we handle here. So 911 has been with the county since 2012, and we do not pay for that. I mean, there's state funding that comes through based on populations, et cetera. And so, but the county gets that on behalf of us, essentially, to pay for that funding.
Or your telephone bill.
Or your yeah, all those, but all those fees go to Watauga County to service 911. And that's fire and police, all 911 is handled through Watauga County, well, in the Watauga County portion, Caldwell and the Caldwell County portion.
Can I make a quick comment about our dispatchers? I just wanted you to be aware that we're trying to utilize those folks also to take care of some other auxiliary functions. They handle a lot of our admin tasks, they handle a lot of our, making sure our bills are processed and moved to town hall or payroll functions. We're in the process of moving some of the functions that police officers were having to do, like we had to have one of our supervisors committed to managing video footage, and that is wildly time consuming, wildly. So we're in the process of moving some of those functions over to some of our telecommunicators to do as auxiliary functions to try to free up the sworn police officers to be outside. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Did, I got a couple of points here. One, look, it's on a G right there on that second star down where it says associated with.
Bringing.
Brennan.
Did we add this year, somebody into dispatch? Because I noticed the salaries have jumped $100,000 on salaries.
Well, we went from 2 dispatchers to 4.
But I thought that was in last year, so it's in this year's upcoming budget.
It was a
Yeah, because we
mid-year
did that in
change.
February. in mid-year.
So when you look at last year's budget compared to this budget, you're gonna see that increase, because it happened in the middle of the year.
So 6 months or whatever, right, okay.
And there is also a portion of Lieutenant Church's salary in that number too, is that right?
I don't think so.
Well, he was there
That's just
before.
dispatch.
He is in dispatch.
He is, yeah, he's in dispatch as well
Yeah.
within that. We
But
just
he
moved
was
him
there
in.
before.
Yeah.
Okay, and then this, I just put this up here too, this is kind of a zoom in on the capital, for the year, and you can see IP is installment purchase, CF is cash funded, so these are some of the cash items, one-time items that we're using sales tax towards.
So the 2 police cars are not for new officers, that's just we were in a cycle of doing 2 a year. If we can get them, if we can actually get cars, that would be nice, but these two are just part of the cycle. And then we would be looking for, continue adding to the hybrid fleet that we have within that. If we, again, hopefully we find the cars, that's key. So does not include any additional positions that we would potentially hire.
Finally get the one that we've been.
Yes, we finally took delivery on the second hybrid for this fiscal year that was missing, yes. And it is on the road, yes.
After a year.
It was about a year.
So we had paused some vehicles due to COVID. So are we caught up now?
During COVID, we only purchased 1 vehicle instead of 2. I feel like we're in a okay spot right now. We may have to look at that in the future. A lot of our vehicles, we're keeping them to much higher mileages. We also have a town mechanic that's been allowing us to do that successfully. So at some point, we may have to come and do a little catch up, but I think we're okay with it.
And what kind of life expectancy?
I think right now, we're looking at about 10 years. if we take a vehicle and we keep it.
10 years?
About 10 years, we can, about 6 or 7 years it'll be on the road assigned to somebody full-time. And then we'll pull that vehicle off and use it as a part-time or reserve vehicle, or when somebody's vehicle's down for maintenance, or
About $6,000 a year per vehicle. So that's when you were saying you were amortizing
That's right.
the grant money.
So Shane, since.
Now, I'll say, so for clarity, so on the amortization, we do 5 years, because that's the depreciation. 4 years, because that's the depreciation number, so we, depreciation rules are different.
So $60,000 over 4 years.
Yes.
Well, I think for grant purposes, and I think I'm correct on this, for grant purposes, they'll pay all of that cost up front, I believe.
On the grant, yes, so I'm saying,
Right.
on general, though, we use depreciation, which is 4 years for us, and that's dictated by the county principles within that.
Right.
But you said figuring 80 for a police officer included in vehicle form. Okay.
So Shane, has there been, since the new hybrids have come in, has there been any significant saving on maintenance and?
Yeah.
We did a very preliminary, we need to dig into that deeper now that they've been on the road longer and we have more of them. But initially, some of the numbers I came up with was about a 30 to 33% savings in the hybrids, which is very significant. And
Absolutely.
we need to dig into that a little bit deeper now that we've had a longer history with them.
Yeah, could you come back
Sure.
and give us some information on that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's based on mainly right now on fuel.
Well, that was fuel consumption in gallons, not cost. So, the cost may be going up, but the consumption was better.
Yeah, the mechanic piece is something that we don't really put a number to, but that's, we need to look into that as well. We've talked about that, Matt and I have, about trying to put some together some numbers, because Steve's position is a tremendous position that saves us, not only in the middle of a snowstorm, but for the fleet vehicles as well. He's able to maintain brakes, oil changes, that type of typical routine maintenance, all that's been done, tires, et cetera, through his position within that. So it keeps us from utilizing private services within that. So.
All right, the street department, this is continued funding for right-of-way clearing, contracted cemetery mowing, that along with the 421 landscaping and mowing has a 2% CPI that we have budgeted for and is part of that contract. We continue to fund the master signage plan, and those, again, the wayfinding signage is a part of that we are looking towards for the new year. The LED lights out on the bypass are included in this department's budget. And then we also we have funding set aside for road repairs, culvert replacements, ditch line repairs, fire hydrant valve maintenance, and existing sidewalk repairs. We've been doing this the past 2 or 3 years, and then those are intended for use during the year should those projects come up or those needs come up. However, at the end of the year, if those funds are not utilized, we are transferring those to reserves in order to save up for bigger project needs. So those are the level of funding for those. We have our capital items. We have a chipper, replacement of a Ranger, and 2 traffic message signs to be utilized for leaks.
Oh, is that like the one we leased?
It is, so 2 things up here, the chipper is the pull-behind chipper, so the diesel-powered chipper, is the gasoline, is it diesel, pull-behind chipper for mulching, et cetera. The Ranger's replacement of the truck. Now, that being said, we have now reduced our take-home vehicles by 1 more, so we have, we continue to kind of look at that each year, and so we had our mechanic who had a take-home vehicle. We've reduced that as well. So we have 1 less take-home vehicle in the town, so I think that's an important thing to point out. And then the traffic message signs, those are your pull-behind big signs, that we've rented now for quite some time. During COVID, we found out how expensive those were, and we ended up paying, they're about $6,000 a month to rent those. And so from time to time, we need those. And so That's proposed within the budget, 2 of those signs, at a cost of about 19 something a piece, to utilize for mainly road work that needs to be done. We used on 321 just last week, signage there for closing down the roads, but those are proposed within that.
Pay for them 3 years.
Parades, things like that, we can utilize them for.
I noticed you've got, cemetery in there, Matt. Is there anything in there for the expansion of it, or, you know, where we're starting to run short of there at the top?
Yeah, I mean, we're at the point now, the area we have available to expand in, I don't see any way we can get traditional graves in there. It is beyond rocky. The last road, back road, section 6, on the east side of the cemetery, you know, we have to take our track over hammer up there now to get the grave open. And I'm afraid that
Talks with Hamptons and
you know, they all seem interested, but until we're, you know, to the point we want to see what that partnership looks like, you know, it'll take some money to get it graded, cleared and graded where it needs to be. And then, you know, I know Hamptons, Austin Barnes, there was somebody else that approached me about the possibility of putting mausoleums up there, or columbariums for remains, or whatever that looks like. I think it needs to be put into it, so it's not kind of a hodgepodge, you know, just kind of thrown together. And I don't know if the town funds that, and then they buy it from us and use them, or if we give them the land and let them put their own to on it, and, you know,
you feel like we're good for this year?
yeah, I think I've counted, I have to go back and check, but I think we're somewhere, probably about 110 plots left,
So, you know, other examples of how that looks, so one, obviously, the town can do it also, we can decide to fund whatever that looks like, so columbariums or mausoleum, whatever we decide to do. We can bid it out if we wanted to do something with a private entity, that's typical. We can't just pick one and do an exclusive deal, so we'd have to put together. So there is some thought that we need to put into it if we're going to expand it, especially with the private entity, as much as even us doing it. There needs to be enough thought to what we may want that to look like, and then how do we want to, you know, essentially write that proposal, the RFQ or RFP, but RFQ, I guess, in this situation, we go out. So we've been approached in the past by individual funeral homes. I know Austin Barnes has talked to me, Hamptons, Greg did a couple of years ago. He was still alive about what kind of partnership there could be, but we'd have to get our details in order and then put together some type of RFQ, put that out there.
Well, at one time, we looked at some of the fees there about out of town or out of county, because still we're one of the cheapest places to die.
We changed fees 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago, we changed, I think a non-taxpayer now pays $2,000 per plot, which was substantially more than it was, and a taxpayer is, $500.
Yes, we doubled the non-taxpayer. I think it was 1,000. We went from 1,000 to 2,000 within that. But it's amazing the number of people that want to be here after passing. Some that have no ties whatsoever.
No ties.
Yeah, they just, yeah, so it's.
And that's revenue neutral.
And a cemetery is one of those things where, you know, the discussion may be that we don't want to do anything. We want to allow it to fill up and move on. Should be a no. So that's another conversation. Do we want to continue expanding or not?
That was a sign.
That was a sign.
He's not happy with you.
That's like saying,
Yes, we want to expand. Oh, yeah. So yes, we want to expand. That's the answer.
All right, sanitation and recycling. We have continued to decrease our positions there. We now have 3 in the sanitation and recycling department. We're able to do that by the commercial garbage pickup contract with Republic Services. That's also helped in replacing the garbage trucks. So we have recognized savings there. We continue to fund residential solid waste collection and the residential curbside recycling program. with no increase this year. I think that Republic came in the same, I think it was kind of all together. So between it all, there was not a change in the residential recycling cost for citizens. Okay, planning and inspections. This continues the implementation of the comprehensive plan. It was last updated in 2014, and again, the cost of that update is in the central government department. But again, looking to fund half of that in the new fiscal year. Continued funding of a signage study and ordinances surrounding those, and then continued funding of the permanent application and review process, and of course inspections as well. Not a lot of change happening in the planning and inspections department.
You want to take a quick break or continue through?
Yeah, I was on what, when you went over sanitation, you know, we discussed the weekend pickups. Has any more been gone into that yet?
Yeah, so Matt stepped out. So hiring this position on the weekends, being full-time, I think is going to help us with Main Street as being part of that. And we've discussed what that's going to look like. We haven't hired the position yet, but we've discussed that as being an additional one. So, you know, right now the change, and Matt can tell you when he gets back, the change with, you know, Barry's group, so to speak, is they now have a day or two a week that they're helping out and do other things, especially like right now during cleanup week. But I know Barry has been on water leaks and some other things that helping us out with rotating within that. But the Main Street piece, we're really thinking this position in Park and Rec will be able to do bathrooms and assist with the trash. And then how that looks with parking with the Public Works, you know, utilizing the mini truck or what that's going to look like, we haven't worked out those details since the TDA just approved it last week. But the thought process is have that reoccurring on the weekends.
It's you know, it could almost be picked up twice a day on the weekends. It's just.
It is. The issue we have right now, issue, is that the current ones are, you know, bagless. And so we need to get through that process of putting bags out there so we can be able to tie them up, throw them in the back of a truck, mini truck.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues with those cans on Main Street.
So
Yeah, we're trying to figure out, because right now, my weekend staff doesn't have the ability to just go and dump a trash can into a garbage truck or something like that, so.
Question, these cans have cans in them, don't they?
Yes, but there's no trash bag in them.
I know we can. Did you get the 60-gallon trash bags to go in?
we can. So we've not done it in the past because it's been quicker for them to just stop dumping the trash, and so bags are that discussion. Landfill down there, which is why a lot of this rate change was able to be taken into account. So there's obviously benefit for them to haul the trash to their own landfill within that. So that continues, I think, to do well. No issues with that. They're taking less trips a week down there, but they're able to maximize their time. We've stopped, you know, we were taking it over to Boone's. We now just have one individual driving towing order versus having multiple individuals driving. So we've been able to do some cost savings on some of that. We're finding them things to do in the Public Works.
They still do recycling?
Their Publix does all the recycling. Everywhere in town, they do all the recycling. Republic does.
All right, you want to take a 15-minute break?
Yep.
Making a mess here. I'll clean up that.
It's your job to look after it.
Yes.
I got to deal with it.
Can we put a paper towel dispenser in the men's bathroom? Can we add a paper towel dispenser in the men's bathroom to the budget?
Paper towel dispenser?
The one's in there is broken. We just need to,
Oh,
Yeah, we're struggling.
Kevin broke it yesterday.
Kevin breaks everything.
oh my goodness.
Kevin.
Well, I fixed it, he broke it.
Kevin needs his own bathroom.
we,
Oh,
He does.
I did try to fix
I
it
would-
yesterday.
yeah, we all would.
Before I yanked it off the wall, I said, you have to step on here.
I really think that we're just looking at
Blow loose in the China factory, that's all we use.
I've got one of those in my house. That's what it is. It's like, how'd you bring that?
add $150 to the budget.
Hey, now we can you get these plans?
We'll just start taking it out of Kevin's salary.
I need to-
All right, you got the floor.
All right, okay, moving into Parks and Rec. So we have continued continued funding for part-time staff in Memorial Park attendance. No, wait, that's wrong. We have the full-time 2 positions for Memorial Park attendance, actually. So that note that's last year's note. And then below it, you can see the funding for the additional. So we need to change the top note to be now a full-time staff member for Memorial Park attendant, and then the additional park attendant that's TDA funded.
We still will have the Memorial Park part-time people, the HUT people and that type of thing that will help out with it. But now we've got the 2 full-time positions.
Yes, and then this last note, just talks about the landscape contract for Valley Boulevard. And it's now at $290. That reflects a 2% CPI cost increase, to the contract for that.
Now, half of that comes from TDA, doesn't it?
Correct.
5 years.
I think it's 3. Is that right, Jennifer, or was it 5?
It's state maintenance, 3 years or 5-year contract?
It is 3.
3 years, okay.
They do a great job.
Yes, they do, you're right. Dave.
Even though they're working
Unless
on
y'all do something
Saturdays.
different.
And then down below it, you can see, so we have cash funded items of $76,000 for, we have New Year's Creek dredging. The study for that is, been estimated at $30,000. And then the remaining half of the rock wall in front of Memorial Park, will be another $30,000. And then Devant Field Pavilion skin repair, is estimated at $16,000. So those combined are $76,000. Looking at capital outlay, we have recoating of the Marcite coating on the pool at $105,000. We are putting that to be installment purchase financed as well. The other IP purchase or financed item is the 2005 mini excavator replacement. And then a couple of cash funded items, a heater for the landscape bay, and then, did we?
We took that out. I said I would recommend taking that out.
We think that might,
I was gonna let it go. They will be very happy.
I will double check that.
I'll tell you why in a minute. so.
And then replacement of the Easy Go golf cart of $12,000. Those are cash funded.
I had recommended taking out the heater for the landscape bay, because there's so much uncertainty with what we're doing with buildings and stuff right now. And so we've been able to make do. That's to the building to the right, not to the left if you're looking at it. So they had asked for a heater to be placed in there to be able to work and do things in the wintertime.
We also keep equipment and stuff in there with gas and motors and engines and stuff, so.
I'm really surprised the wood stove cost $8,000.
It's Kevin supplying the wood.
No. So, dredging study on Roy Hill, and then, the rock wall and skin repairs. We've got some other stuff, I think, that's coming with the full coating was the biggest one here. So the Park and Rec group had met, kind of come up with some different things there. This is not the full list, this is just what's included in this.
I do have a question, this is a sticky subject, as we all know. Oh gosh, fountain, no. Fountain's done.
Well, you said sticky out.
No, it's the other one, tennis,
Pickleball.
That's
So
your
there-
park study, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a meeting scheduled for
Next
next
month.
Monday with McGill and McGill's project lead, Carrie, on the beginning discussions of what that's going to potentially look like. And there's another meeting, is it Thursday of next week with the pickleball group?
No, this Thursday.
This Thursday, that's right. So we're just beginning that conversation with.
Okay, now, is this part of your master plan that you guys are working with?
Part of the election plan.
Are we annexing these people?
It's not gonna be done until next
Where
week.
you guys saying?
I'm on the pickleball team.
So,
So I guess it is part of your program.
No, it's not. The strategy or the advisory committee simply got the grant, and the design and all is kind of in McGill and Parks and Rec's court.
No pun intended.
we
Very
have to,
Appreciate
so we have to have tennis courts, we have to have pickleball courts. I mean, those are the requirements under the part of grant that we're receiving. How that looks is what we've got to figure out, so. And
Don't lie, we got the money.
pickleball has a designee, I suppose you could say, that is kind of their spokesperson that is meeting on Thursday of this week.
I feel the lasers in the back of my head.
I feel your cold stare.
I will say in all seriousness, we know we have to continue to have tennis, and we know we need pickleball, so we've got to figure out how that's going to look. But we can't there's not getting rid of one or the other, or even really reducing one or the other. I mean, tennis is something that the county can tell you right now, and you can tell you, Doug can tell you, been on the Park and Rec board, that's very passionate people about tennis and very passionate people about pickleball. So we've got to try to figure out.
Yeah, so you can put them together.
So we'll have a barbed wire fence down the middle of.
Razor wire.
They don't ever see each other, have to come in contact with each other, but so we're truly, starting this week, next week, we have not met. McGill's initial meeting about the design is Monday.
Sorry about that, David, I ain't putting you on the spot, I mean.
It's all good. These are good problems.
I love how everybody
On the
forgets
Parks
to sit
and
on
Rec,
that with you.
question for Jennifer. Increase, right at 40,000 on special events. Can you elaborate a little on
That is where the money is coming for the shuttle. So the TDA, the piece that Nicole said was adding for to help fund for the shuttle. So in our current budget that we have, the shuttle is not included in that. But because we were kind of coming out of COVID and we weren't doing our full festivals and all that, we were able to cover the shuttle this year out of that line. So that's why, part of the reason why that's come up.
That's a portion, yes.
A portion, the biggest piece is the TDA's funding 20,000 towards Christmas lights.
Yes.
That's the biggest increase in that number, is that we're doing the outsourcing of the Christmas lights. That's included in that $66,000
That's
number.
under the special event.
That's under the $66,000, yes. That's the increase. The majority of the increase is
How much
the
is that
Christmas
saving
lights.
us in overtime, though, by using our own people?
It took our full-time staff, all of us, 2.5 weeks to get everything decorated. And during that time,
Not including 321.
not including 21.
Yeah, 'cause we didn't do, y'all did.
Correct.
It took that long to get the tree done last year.
If that tree wasn't there, we wouldn't have to decorate it.
So,
Ain't gonna be much longer.
yes, that is,
That's what practice.
it took a lot of time, and our landscape crew, it put them behind, because that's the time time that we start decorating is the time that they start planting spring bulbs and getting, that's when we plant spring
Well,
bulbs.
didn't you say we were, when this came out, we were saving $30,000 or $40,000 in employee costs?
Easily close to that. By the
I
time
don't know
we
exactly.
do salaries and put us behind, it was a big number.
It was a big number, because you brought that number to Brack too.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was a huge number in employee savings. Plus, not to mention, like she said, I'm just speaking, because all that came up when I was still in Brack, but the guys get to do stuff that they didn't used to get to do, like the spring bulbs and stuff, because they were putting up Christmas decorations.
I will say that the capital items are also a part, not the capital items such as the equipment are part of the capital fleet plan, but the items such as the dredging, and pavilion repairs are all part of the 10-year CIP. All right, and looking at BRAC, there are not a lot of changes going on in the BRAC fund. This is where cleanup day and planting day are paid for, and also landscaping and beautification of the town. The hanging baskets are also paid for out of the BRAC fund. Okay, this is a look at the general fund. This is our installment purchase funded items. So this is capital equipment. It totals $396,965 for the general fund. So this will not include, we've kind of gone through every department and looked at these items, but we've had mixed in the cash funded items as well. So this is just purely looking at the debt service funded capital items for the general fund only. Okay, now we're at the water sewer fund. We're moving along. So looking at the revenues first, similar to the general fund, our main categories of revenue are going to be water and sewer charges, and then we have a miscellaneous category, which is equivalent to the other revenue category in the general fund. So in the utility fund, miscellaneous revenue or other revenues is made up of primarily debt proceeds and then impact or connection fees. We also have disconnection fees in here, as well as interest income. So it's a fairly broad category, but again, it's up in the top 3 of our revenue sources. This is a look at our pie chart of revenues. This is a total of $2.491515 million for the water sewer fund this year in the recommended budget. That is comprised of 47% water charges, 41% sewer charges, and then we're looking at our miscellaneous category there of 8%. So those are the top 3 revenue categories.
Does this not include the connection charges for the new hotel, or does it?
Yeah, so, yep, those are the impact or connection fees.
So those do include those up on the
Yeah, so all water and sewer fees are captured here. If it's not the typical bi-monthly charges, that's water and sewer, then it's all pretty much within that miscellaneous or other revenues. That's where the impact or connection fees come in. Yep, that's included in that. So the rating one was paid this past fiscal year, so it's not included in next fiscal year. So that's paid in advance of.
So they already paid their fees?
Yeah, that was done, when was that, Kevin? It was 100 and some thousand.
Last year. That was last year.
It may have been last fiscal year.
It
I
was,
think it was last year.
yeah.
Last fiscal year.
It was over $100,000, they paid.
Okay.
All right, we are in year 2 of our 5-year rate/revenue recovery plan for the water sewer fund. We are realizing revenue increases there, and in this year's budget, we were able to create a reserve. We've got projects coming up that we know we're going to need funding for. And looking at our CIP, we will discuss those projects that are on the horizon. So this next phase would be a 5% increase in both water and sewer rates. This is a reminder of our plan. So again, we're in year 2. Last year we had a 10% increase, and we also adjusted our base. So now we will maintain that 3,000 gallon base and increase our base rate and our per thousand gallon rate by 5%. you can see some comparisons, on year two, and you can see, the net income increase that we're expecting there, as a result of those rate changes.
You feeling good about
Yeah.
this plan?
Yeah, we are,
It's panning out like you thought it was,
yes,
thought it would?
yes. Yeah, for the first time that we've, put the rate increases, this one is impactful. We're seeing the fruits of that, so, yeah.
Good.
It was done the right way.
And we were able to use this when we worked with the financial advisor on the service piece. So when we looked at what's our debt capacity, we were able to utilize this plan to utilize what appetite, so to speak, we have there. And that's where these numbers are playing into. So we're able to recognize that future debt impact with still showing potential reserves as well for future debt services within that.
Okay, so this is a look at the expenditure side. That's the 2.491515, broken out into 3 different departments in our water sewer fund. We have admin and billing, that's at 39% of the total budget. Plant operations is at 36%, and field operations is at 25%. Taking a look at the expenditures, in the admin side of things, we do pay for debt service. So that's one of the reasons that the admin finance is the bigger piece. We pay for things. It's similar to like the central government department of the water sewer fund. We don't have central government and water sewer fund. It's paid for out of admin, the administration piece of water sewer fund. So we have debt service for past plant upgrades. We have our interconnect debt service. We have the remaining 25% of the public works facility debt service, as well as our GEO bond debt service for the water sewer fund related debt. Field operations staff is paid for out of the field operations department within the water sewer fund. We also pay for plant staff out of the plant department. And then there's funding for various repairs to the water and wastewater treatment plants. There is only one capital item in the water sewer fund this year, and that would be the new front end loader at an estimated cost of $187,179. We do have a estimate on that, a formal estimate. And this is, very simply for the water sewer fund. On the general fund side, we had the different items listed, but this is just basically our installment purchase funding of $187,179 to, and I didn't change that slide.
Not for the truck.
Not for a truck, sorry.
Not turns out our truck.
That's for the front end loader that we looked at over here. I just forgot to update the second slide. Sorry about that.
How much longer do we have debt service on the interconnect?
Let's see, so we do have our debt service schedule in here. I think that was a 20-year state revolving loan,
Yeah, so 10 years probably.
Yeah.
We're halfway through.
probably about 10
I think it was
years.
12 or 13 when that started being paid for.
It's 8 years, 9 years if you include this year's budget.
Okay.
And then looking ahead, so there's some projects that, are priorities of town council but they're not, you may not see them in the budget and you wonder, well, why aren't they in the budget? It's because the timing of the funding will push it out to where we don't need the funding in this year's budget. But we are looking ahead to these projects, or maybe they are loan funded, and we will not set up the project until a loan is initiated. So some of those projects would be the Main Street water and sewer lines. Those are ARPA funds. So until we recognize the revenue and expenditures, we wouldn't do that in the budget process. We do that via separate project amendment. Similarly, the plant upgrades and the Mayview lift station rehab, those are things we certainly plan on doing and are moving ahead. but you may not see them in the budget because they're done separate. They will be proposed separately. AMI meter reading technology upgrades. This one's also planned to be loan funded. So when we have a total cost on that and a loan package, that will be brought to council and done via budget amendment.
So if I can,
Yeah.
on those three, we'll go back. So Main Street water sewer lines, obviously, $1.8 million is recognized. Again, until we receive bids, set up the project, we'll recognize that at that time. Around that same time is when we plan upgrades to maybe lift station and AMI. So all that's being designed now. So McGill's working through the design phase on the plants, water and sewer, along with maybe lift station. All will be bid out around that same time frame. So once we receive money or receive bids back, those bottom two obviously will be loan funded. And so from there, we'll be able to know exactly what we're looking at. That being said, the debt service piece with the rates are built into what we're seeing here. So there's a reserve number. So there's a reserve number that we put in here that's under the water and sewer expenses, administrative engineering. It's called the transfer of water sewer capital is what it's called.
152.5.
Yes.
That's right. That's future debt service to pay for these projects.
That was a question I had for you, is that I don't see it moved up in the water capital reserve funds above. Is there a reason?
Well, that's gonna be in these schedules. So Fund 50 is where that will transfer in. And
Because I was reading, it's transferred to water and sewer capital reserve, but then up above it where it says zeros on the capital reserves.
That's right. It's moved to the back for the future. So that 152 number, the conversation we had was because of the timings pushed out to start paying for this really next fiscal year, to continue on the same plan that we were planning with the 5% increase this year, just to continue to smooth out the rate increases to be able to offset the debt service. So within that versus not doing something this year. So we continue to look forward to putting that money back. That's debt service money is what that is. I mean, that's to pay for the future debt service of really those bottom two items.
Because I know we had talked about adding to the water and capital reserve fund because it hadn't been added to since, I think, 2013 or
we.
been a while. 25,000, I think, was last added to it, something like that.
Yeah, well, we did last year, and we are planning to do that this year. So let me kind of circle back to where we started from. On your question, the 152,563, we are expending that on the water sewer admin department. So it's like transferring that from the water sewer department to Fund 50, where it can be held in a reserve to be used for debt service. We would transfer it back when the debt service is due to cover it. But then, if you go to the plant operations and the field operations, in the field operations department, if you look down at the bottom, below capital outlay, you will see the water line replacement repairs reserve and the sewer line INI replacement /reserve. So those are similar, when we talked about in the street department, where we allocate those funds for the year, and if there's repairs or replacements needed, that those will cover in the fiscal year they're used, but if they're not, the idea and the note at the bottom says we're gonna transfer those to reserves. So you can see there's amounts of 10,000 in the water and 10,000 in the sewer line for this fiscal year. Last year, we had 22.5 in each of those.
And the debt service is still, we don't have an exact number of what that's going to look like right now. So some of that may be used for potential capital reserves within that. Depends on, we don't know what the rates are going to look like. So we're talking about bidding this out, late this year. So a lot of unknown between now and then with markets on how it looks. We still are looking to hopefully get USDA loan, which is typically low interest. It's 40 years as well, which helps smooth out that debt service piece.
That will help because rates are going up.
You mean for the Maybe project?
And the plant upgrades.
And the plant upgrades.
Yeah, So plant upgrades are projected right now, and I think we'll go over that in a few minutes with the long-term. The plant upgrades and the
Yeah.
maybe together, those two are a little bit north of 4 million.
Just food for thought, before we forget about it, we need to make sure that we officially acknowledge the assistance that Representative Pickett and Ballard did coming up sometime soon for that
Do you-
money. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Will it be the end of the year before we bid out the Main Street project also? Any way to move that up?
Let's see.
The permitting has to be, everything has to be submitted by August the 1st to the state. So we're working with, water, but,
This is
DEQ
water
is,
line,
Main Street.
water line.
are you thinking
I
funding?
didn't hear you.
So Bill was wanting to know in case he could possibly,
We're missing them.
because we know
We got to go.
cost is going to be probably more than anticipated. And he was wondering if
Yeah, it's,
extra funding in the short session, but that wouldn't work. They'll be out by then.
yeah, it's, rushed to get it August 1st because of the design and permitting fees is what we were told.
He was asking me and I was like, I don't know, but I'm trying to find out on Tuesday.
And then they have 90 days, or 120 days, I think. They have 3 months or 4 months to get it back to us. We hope they get it back to us sooner than that. They have 3 months, 90 days to get it back to us is what it is. So they've got August, September, October. Actually, it's 4 months, November to get it back to us. So as soon as they get it back to us, we can bid it.
We go to getting overdrive.
Yeah, McGill's own it. I mean, from their standpoint, the unknown is how long it takes the state to review all the design and the permitting side of it, and get back to us with an official document that we can enact.
Shane, you mentioned at the retreat you were looking at a couple companies on the water reading technology. Any updates on who those might be and?
So we're gonna bid it out as well. So we have to bid that out, so we can't, so we've gone through and had some companies come in the last, 6 or 8 weeks and to show the design and applications, that type of thing, and then, we'll be bidding that out this summer, I guess is the plan within that. So,
You said that there were a couple really good companies.
a couple that's been worked with, we worked with previously. There's also some new ones. Brunco just informed me the other day that they're getting into that business as well.
So you decided to get into it now?
They are. I was told by Mike High at the Underground Utilities meeting that they'd like to come and talk with us in the next few weeks. So we have
They have their equipment to monitor it.
They do. So I mean, they covered the area, so they already have the poles and things to be able to utilize within that. So
What have I got on my meter? I just got an email said I was wasting.
We'll discuss that in closed session, Albert.
All I did was wash my driveway down.
I think so. You got one of the pilot ones, I guess, that we
Yes,
had,
sir.
right?
Yeah, yeah. And you can probably adjust that level, I think, of consumption. So it probably just is where
I
yours
mean,
is set.
I
I'm
think in
sure.
8 years, it's only one I ever got.
Oh, huh.
8 years, that's an 8-year roll, you got
What
to
was the
reevaluate.
lady that left?
Holly?
Oh, she always accused me of fudging the thing.
Oh,
Downward.
no. We're sure you weren't doing that. All right, so next we will look at the 10-year CIP. We're gonna start with streets, paving, and sidewalks. Okay, that's pretty readable, I think, but you have it in your books. But this is just a 5-year zoom in. Your book is gonna have 10, because it is a 10-year plan, but to make it readable on here, I just took 5 years. So in your 22-23, these are the allocations, the culverts, and the paving the ditch lines. Those are part of the street department's budget, and those are the amounts that we had allocated to where they're there for spending in the operating budget. But if those amounts do not come up during the year as needs, they will be transferred to reserve line items. One thing that I will point out is the North Main sidewalk. That is a part of the plan, and you will see that it's crossed out, and it's showing in year 23-24. We did move that forward for affordability. This is in the general fund side, so again, a project to consider for one-time funding.
And the timing of that will actually be within that fiscal year, not this fiscal year. So if we elect to move forward with the sidewalk on North Main, that would be a part of the Main Street water sewer. Construction would be into 23, 24. And whether that's, again, using one-time money like ABC or something of that nature, TDA type money to pay for that, or if that's adding that on to some type of loan is yet to be determined. But it's not, it wouldn't fall within this fiscal year. We talked about reserving for some for it, but we didn't.
I'll tell you, you speak of sidewalks, I definitely believe the sidewalk needs to be looked into going down 221 to down the pool. We brought that up a few years ago.
On Clark Street,
Clark, yeah.
good. We absolutely can. We can look into getting design numbers of what that would look like.
Well, you figure it comes up this way, it ends, and it doesn't connect now with Bass Lake, and we're away back in.
So from Devant up to 221 is what you're
Yeah.
speaking of.
Oh, you're talking about coming up Clark and 221 on that side.
Yeah, we have talked about that previously. I don't know how far we've gotten. I'll follow up with that and see what that design would look like.
Yeah, and this is a living document,
Yeah.
so it's meant to be a starting point and evaluated every year. So next we'll move into Parks and Recreation. Looking here at Memorial Park, those Memorial Park improvements for 22-23, those are all Part F related items. And then in Broyhill Park, there is the dredging study of $30,000 that is included in the recommended budget. However, it does push out the sidewalk needs that were included. This is continuing with Parks and Recreation. We have, I think, I broke it out into 3 different slides just to make it, again, more readable. Year one is where we show the $25,625 for repairing route columns down at the pool, but I think that's already been done in this fiscal year, right? Or is going to be done in this fiscal year?
We have patched what we can, but we haven't really addressed the overall, I guess, structure of the columns. Right now, we're just fixing them as they fall down. Or any that are loose, we go back and fix. But it really is probably much larger.
The answer may not be to go back with rock.
Right.
I mean, some of those rocks, if they fell, somebody could probably kill them. So.
The skin repair and the sidewalk path at Devant Field are listed here, as well as the Marsite coating on the inside of the pool. This shows as year 2, which is the current fiscal year. Or the 22-23 budget year. Okay, and then Annie Cannon Gardens, there are landscape improvements there. And then the wall is not the same wall.
Yeah, the 30,000 is for
Spillway?
a spillway for like just shooting concrete along the edge of it temporarily until we figure out if we're going to do something different down there. Is what's included in there.
Yeah, and I don't think we didn't include that one in this budget. We included the $30,000 for the Memorial Park wall, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we didn't include that in this, so
Okay.
we'll include that.
Okay. And then there's nothing planned for Kushner or the American Legion connectivity, or the clubhouse restrooms, I think, are potentially going to be covered differently.
So we had talked with the Board of Elections about the possibility of that becoming a permanent location for them. They wanted to try it out this year. I think they're loving that location. So those bathroom facilities, ADA accessible, may be something we work with them on moving forward. So I think that was a conversation I had with Matt about who would pay for that and what that may look like. So,
Great.
yeah, so I've heard nothing but good reviews back from that location so far.
And then we are moving to the water sewer fund. Looking at the plant upgrades, this is the ARC loan funded, 1.5 for the water plant and then 8.29 for the wastewater plant. And then the Main Street water line with the state allocated ARP funds. So these projects are not yet bid out, so we don't have, these are placeholders and estimates from McGill.
So on the plants, I will say we met with plant operators, Matt, McGill, and myself met with the plant operators, both wastewater and water, and went through the list of items to include in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and everybody's in agreement. So that's what you're seeing here with what, and we haven't bid it out, but that's, so from, high efficiency pumps you see here, high service pumps, finished water pumps, everything you're seeing here was, we met a few weeks ago and kind of walked through their priority versus McGill's, and they were about 90% lined up. There was a couple things within that.
How about the off-site monitoring system?
That's included in phase 1. The SCADA is included in phase 1. Phase 1 of SCADA, so there's 2 phases of that, but phase 1 would be the crucial, so tank levels, spills, that type of thing at the wastewater plant. Water plant, of course, tank levels is number 1 within that. Eventually adding that to our PRVs is kind of phase 2, and our maybe lift stations. So you have the ability to expand that out, to add that to your remote locations as well within that. But phase 1 is getting the plants. Primarily the water plant is looking at levels and looking at both tanks are finished in our reveal. At the wastewater plants, it's looking at potential spills with the weather issues that cause there.
Well, I know we talked about it too, about when our next inspection was due for that tank up there.
Yeah, so we, I don't think we have a slide on that, but we've included $50,000. McGill, part of that meeting that we had, McGill is going to be bidding out, if I can find it, tell you, it's already in the budget, that's the point. So both tanks, so we're looking to bid out, McGill's going to do that, so it'll be coming to you all to approve, but we did put $50,000 in the budget, reoccurring for a long-term tank contract maintenance. That would include painting, cleaning, the diving, so all that's done early on. We haven't bid it out yet, but
I
that
thought
was
we
part
put
of that.
those monies in last year. Do we not?
Okay. So I'm going to say the year before I came, we terminated the contract with the entity that we had, and then we did a one-off resurfacing of the tanks. I think, right, we did some concrete work or something within that. We haven't
Not
done
really
anything
many
since.
years left on the life expectancy on that, but sometime we're gonna have to do is start thinking about the possibility of another tank.
You mean the one at the water plant?
Green Hill. McGill, quite some time ago, found a potential site. And we never would disclose it because the price had gone that way.
So
I
what's
think we're the
included?
only town I know that just has one water tank.
So what's included in here is $50,000. It's in the administration/engineering billing with water and sewer, earmarked for possible tank maintenance contract. We did put that in there, but we'll have to bid that out and get some bids back. That's what we look like. Our criteria that we talked about with plant operators is in year 1, obviously initial inspection, initial tank cleanings of divers going into the tanks to clean them. And then I think as the years progressed, it was external maintenance as well, so painting of the tanks. But that'll be coming to you all. We haven't bid that out yet. We did talk about that when we met with the plant operators.
Well, let me ask you this, when that tank on Green Hill has to be replaced, what's the plan? Can we pull from the clear well to give water to the town, or is it all to come off Green Hill?
No, I mean, we'll have to, that tank, I don't think, and I'm not speaking for McGill, deal, but I don't think you can, I think you can replace with a new tank, but not in the same location. That, something's gonna have to stay active up there because of the gravity system.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I don't know, because we don't have any additional land, I don't know what that would look like. And we've talked about it, you know, off the record of what some different locations would look like, but that one will have to stay in place as the system, there's no way around it.
That's something that needs to go on our radar before too far down the road, because something there was to happen.
Close up the time.
So part of the contract thought was we get someone in initially, like I said, the first year, full inspection, cleaning, et cetera, all that to make sure we know kind of what we're dealing with, and then from there we develop a plan of what replacement would look like. But we haven't had anyone in those tanks in a number of years. It's been a while, so we need to do that first to get someone, which is divers. They send divers into the tank, and they clean, full clean tank, do a full cleaning of the tank and a full inspection, and they're state certified to give us back a report of what that tank looks like. So if anybody's wants to do it, freebies to dive in that tank.
I'm not sure he's gone now, but I'm not sure Mitch might not have been the last one in that tank.
It's been a while. You're right, it is.
Move more lunch up there.
And a GoPro.
In the GoPro, that's right.
You couldn't get through the scuttle.
You sit over there and be quiet, okay?
All right, also in the water sewer fund, we have got the water meter replacements. Since this time, and in meeting with the vendors and kind of doing some of the background work, we have, that would be not over 3 years. Instead of doing the phasing, we would plan to do it all at one time through installment purchase. So that's estimated at 1.2. Again, we will have hard figures to get loan bids on moving forward. And then sewer line replacements, we don't have any specific replacements planned for this fiscal year. And then also the Mayview pump station is planned to be via ARC loan paired with the plan upgrades. And the Mayview force main is also planned to be included in that as well. Okay, and that's all on the CIP. I don't know if anybody has any questions on the 10-year CIP. If not, this is a recap of the annual winter retreat initiatives of 2022. So the list really quickly was, this is our last slide, by the way, is EMS, solar and sustainability, underground utilities, parking, Roy Hill Park Lake, Annie Cannon Bathrooms Trail and Spillway, North Main Sidewalk, in 2 phases, water and wastewater plant upgrades, pump station and line at Mayview, water meters, traffic and pedestrian safety, and officers, downtown overlay zoning and restaurant seating, and short-term rentals. A lot of these are addressed in the budget, or they're addressed in planning stages right now. Some of them are non-budgetary goals, so it's just a time to reflect on those and how they relate to the recommended budget. That's a lot.
So I would add the underground utilities is another one we haven't talked about. Not to get into that conversation right now, but still waiting on numbers. We don't know what that's going to look like. That'll be something that obviously would have to come to you all once we get through that process. And so that group is still working. Brinco and McGill is hoping to have some final scope, I think a final scope and some design bid-ready documents around August is the timeframe within that. So in July or August. So they're still moving ahead with the monies that were allocated to do the work. The underground utilities group continues to meet every few weeks and provide updates, and that's all the utility providers. So did not include anything in this budget because there's unknown there whether or not, what the cost is and what the plan is of the council.
I'd like to hit on a couple of things. One, we need to start looking at sidewalk expansion, which we discussed a few years ago, like you mentioned a few minutes ago. I think we need to look at additional police. I think that's a must. I think cemetery expansion was brought up. It's something that I think needs to be addressed, and last but not least, I didn't think about it until we started discussing the water tank. We have one water tank here. We lose that, if something happens, we can't use that water tank, we don't have water. Because then we don't have any pumping systems that they can bring into our distribution system, it's all gravity flow. So I think that should be something that we should start looking at very seriously. Okay. Just food for thought. No, it's not.
I think that should be priority one, as far as I'm concerned.
I just didn't even realize,
That's an old tank.
I don't know the age of that tank. Do you know?
I can remember when it was built, so.
You're old.
We won't go after that.
It was built, what, 35, 40 years ago?
Yeah.
So the tank, I will say, is not, step one is definitely get someone in there to give us some ideas of what we're dealing with. And then there has been a location discussed previously, so we need to probably revisit that at that point and start thinking of what that may look like.
That'd be a big goal. Have to replace them.
But I would add to Charlie's list, the EMS situation. I mean, I get asked about it every day. And I've read what it said in the paper, or it was taken from the Watauga Democrat summary of the town budget, their budget down there. And so, any thoughts on that?
So I will clarify, because we've had a few calls here on the county's budget, because if you read it for face value, it looks like the county is adding a 24/7 crew for Beach Mountain, and they're paying for it. And that's not true. Beach Mountain is actually footing the bill. There's a $70,000 credit that they're getting towards the full cost of it because of Avery County's coverage. So Avery and Watauga, Beach Mountain split into two counties. And so there's monies that's going to be coming from the Avery County portion to allow Watauga to cover that. But Beach Mountain's paying for the cost of the ambulance. And so the number we've been given here is about $500,000. And I still think that's the viable number, if they were willing to do it.
That's yearly.
That's yearly within that.
It just amazes me how they can build a $5 million parking garage and not respect those people in their county that for their safety and well-being and dollars.
Thank you.
I would say with all items, especially recurring items, so the ones that are mentioned, that, sidewalk expansion, cemetery expansion, even water tank, I would consider definitely one-time projects that, we could look towards some of this one-time money that may be coming towards us, ABC, TDA, other things we may, be able to look at within that. The PD and the EMS would be the reoccurring pieces that we just need to consider. Our value of a penny is about $165,000. So for police, each additional officer is about a half a cent. That's one way to look at it. On the EMS side, that's about 3 cents, reoccurring within that. So that's kind of some thoughts to put in your mind that we didn't include in this budget, but we definitely have time to put all these things into play. We just need some guidance on some of these conversations.
Other counties provide EMS service to their citizens. County providing. I don't understand.
Well, didn't you say too, like the pump station, maybe it's in the budget, but it's been pushed out for a year?
That's because of when the next service will hit or when the project's expected to start going.
Right. But I mean, we still have a couple things like that that we need to still keep on our priority list at the front.
Yes, and we are, so the rate increases that are included in here essentially we've taken those into account. So we won't have to do, as long as we stay on the plan that we're on right now for water and sewer, Main Street's paid for, the plant upgrades, the lift station upgrades, and even the meters are included in the plan that we're on right now. So we don't have to come up with that one-time money, that's installment. All of that's expected to really take shape and really start, over the next, say, 6 months or so, So by the time we get to wintertime, we should be pushing play on a lot of that stuff and getting some work done, in 2023.
Same with the upgrades on the water.
Absolutely. But that being said, none of that debt service, believe me, we won't even start paying for it until at least 23, 24, and some may be later than that, maybe 24, 25, because most all that is the project has to be complete. It's not even interest-only payments for most of it. We don't start paying it back until the project's complete on that, which is a good thing. So we won't even see some of this debt service even in next year's budget. It may be 2 years from now before we start seeing it. But the rates that we included, that 5%, I think it's 5% next year, or 2.5% to 5%. That keeps us in line to pay for all that, so we don't have to worry about coming up with additional money on the water sewer side.
Well, this thing
Yes, sir.
at this point, what would you and Nicole like to have from council?
I think guidance on a couple things. I mean, guidance on the police. I think that's needed, kind of a conversation on what that may look like. We've applied for the grant, but that's not guaranteed. We don't know. If the desire is to put additional officers on the road, with or without the grant, then that needs to be something we need to discuss, because that would obviously require some additional revenue within that. I think I'll say we're playing with about $50,000 in ABC money that we know for sure that's coming in. That's not quite an officer, but that's getting close to about $80,000 an officer, so that's something to consider as well.
We have to have the spillway. The spillway is, I don't think it's included in our.
We could do one.
Yeah, sure.
Was that in, spillway is immediately, right?
So that was supposed to be intended to be included in this fiscal year in the Parks and Rec operating budget, but, you know what, it says, no, that's dredging. Yeah. It's not, so we will need to add that in.
I think from what we presented today, that a couple of things we know for sure, the 8,000 was going to come out. We need to add 30,000 into the spillway, so we're net lost 22. Gain back 50 on ABC, so I guess we're good 28.
Yes.
So that's kind of where we are right now, I think. So
Is New Year Creek dredging and maybe Lake dredging the same thing?
I think the intention was to do the New Year's Creek spillway. That was the wording for 30,000. Then the dredging was going to be separate. We didn't include that. So we're missing.
But when we talk about dredging, we're talking about the lake.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Both of them?
What
Let's
is,
just study them first.
Yes, sir.
There's one that supposedly filters out all that stuff we don't have to dredge.
That's the New Year's.
but
Well, that's
it,
what the 30,000 is, that's the study, right?
The study should be 30,000 for the study and then 30,000 to fix the spillway in any cannon temporarily to,
60.
so it should be 60 to 30.
you're talking about the coffer
Oh,
dams
yeah.
in the upper,
Yeah.
they need some work also. They're not working properly.
Oh, no, never have.
Yeah.
So the thought process was that we would, so on the spillway, the fix for now, the wall itself, the entire wall itself, is not the issue as much as it's the undermining. The wall eventually will give way. So McGill had given us a quote of going in and essentially spraying concrete along the bottom of it, along a concrete ribbon, so the water won't continue to erode underneath the wall. That was the $30,000 number. The other $30,000 number was doing the full study on the coffer dam and the lake, the Boyle Lake, of getting the depths, the sediment, that type of thing, before we did any dredging within that.
I thought walk over, Camp Tar Button had already done
think there was some dredging that took place a number of years ago.
That was about, what, 8 years ago? 9 years ago?
So we're 30,000 short from, that's what we're saying, so we need to add that, we need to add the spillway piece, or the dredging, whichever way you look at it, into the park and rec budget. We're 30,000 short, so we need that back in.
So would you like to hear from council on an individual basis, or how would you like to?
Well, nothing has to be decided today. I mean, it can be discussed today, or it can be, I mean, so we do have a public hearing that's coming up. So between now and the public hearing gives us 3 weeks to discuss some of this stuff within that. So we're currently looking at a 36-cent tax rate. That's another thing to take into account as you talk through this versus the 32% revenue neutral piece.
What was the price tag on the North Main Street sidewalk?
520 something for,
From the stoplight to the second Hill Street?
correct,
250.
To
times
the
2,
second Hill Street?
500.
a little more than 500. 520 comes to mind, I think, is what the projection was.
250, 250.
It's like, yeah, 262, 262, 500. And again, that piece is, we can be talked about now, but that would be the final piece of the full Main Street project. So we're talking
2 years,
2 years.
almost 3.
probably give or take 2 years before that work's being done.
We haven't talked about the sidewalk extension in some time, and there was a list, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was.
Yeah, the original list included like Ransom Street, Clark Street, and so we can bring that back up and prioritize.
I think you should. I mean, you all jumped to the plate, and you've done a great job with the stairs down the way, which is.
Yeah, they look awesome.
Yeah, Jennifer, those look good.
We've been fortunate to receive a good amount of one-time money that we've been able to use for these projects. So I think that's going to continue, we hope, with ABC money, TDA money, you know, that type of thing that's out there. So that's what our kind of typical formula has been so far to pay for some of that stuff, sidewalk expansions and crosswalks, that type of thing.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, would y'all like to take a quick break? We are going to have to go into closed session. Before we go into closed session, for your thoughts.
Before we do that, I don't think we've answered your first question. Did we?
For police.
I mean, as far as police goes, I don't think.
Well, if there's any, yeah, if there's, while we're together here, if it needs to be done differently, but while we're together, you know, the conversation is, the police one, EMS is out there as well. Obviously, that's a bigger ticket item, but from a reoccurring standpoint, those kind of come to mind to me. Anything else kind of come to mind within that? I mean, those are the big ones, especially when we're talking positions.
Well, my thoughts are to plug in one and hope we get the grants. Chief, your thoughts?
I think that's better than nothing. Thank you. I think all assistance is appreciated.
That's where I was at.
I heard you. What do you thought? What are your thoughts, guys?
I would agree with
Plug
that.
in one and hope for the grants?
What happens when you don't get the grant?
We just have one.
We had one person this year.
We have one person.
And then-
Seven
Would that be,
thousand.
would he be proprietary to 321
Yes, that would still be the primary, I think that's where the need is right now.
or? Well, now, Aaron, you know I'm a police person,
Yes,
but I look at you guys out there give out hundreds of tickets a year. And it doesn't seem to help one damn bit. I think some of the reason is if you get a ticket, you can get yourself a lawyer and spend $500, $600, $700, $800, and it goes down, and Raleigh has a buffer violation. So you don't have the obligation of not speeding again. That's another subject. But do you really think giving more tickets is the answer? That's the question.
well, I think we're doing some other things, we're trying, you know, our radar signs are hopefully gonna be up in a week or so. They're already up, I think, they'll be operational in a week or so. we're trying some other strategies in conjunction with that, but, is that gonna make all speeding go away? No.
Oh, no.
Is it gonna give us some manpower to target some peak times and try to reduce the number of speeders? Hopefully. I think speeding is a problem that's not unique to Blowing Rock. It's
Chronic.
It's everywhere.
But that seems to be where the overwhelming majority of our complaints that we receive come from the speeding issue on 321, and we're just trying to look at ways to address that.
I do, endure me one other thing, I think the water tank should be at the frontal lobe of all of us. Because that thing is really ancient. If it goes, I don't know what it gets to do.
What? I'm confused. Why is that all of a sudden a subject? I haven't heard.
Well, we have talked about not having it inspected in a while, and we've lacked on that. It's a 50-year tank, unless I'm mistaken. We're getting into about 40 years in it. And I think when it's rebuilt, it's gonna be millions when you count the property and rebuilding that tank. And I look at now as one of the better times that's be on our radar. Either I don't know if we end up having to do a bond or what we may end up to with that kind of money, what it's gonna cost for that. But I just think that it's something that we don't need to wait. The closer it gets, the more, that's gonna be a bigger surprise to us.
I don't doubt that. But
David,
all the discussions we've had about water and sewer,
I know. Well,
there hasn't
a
been a
former
thing mentioned about the state.
council enlisted McGill to look at this, 8 years ago? And McGill did a great job. They found another site for an elevated tank. And then we just investigated it till everybody forgot about it.
I think the first step in that is to get a new contract, get it inspected, that's our first step. Then we'll have more information before we start
But let's
speculating.
Let's keep it in mind because it's a potential killer.
Because all our water is, coming from an elevated source, so.
Well, I don't disagree with you at all.
But you got a good point,
My-
David. Yeah, the ball got
My concern is,
Yeah.
all these discussions we have, and we're only talking about it because of Doug's memory.
I would not put that out there.
Why hasn't it been brought to us by our water and sewer department or someone else?
Because of Doug's memory.
The tank maintenance contract has been brought up the last couple of years. I mean, from the tank operators themselves. The state looks at it differently from their operations. We're in compliance from the state's perspective, but we need to get a full-fledged study so we can start planning a discussion within that. That's not something we've done. It's been close to 10 years since that last 9 or 10 years when all this discussion took place and the tank inspection and all that. So we need to re-up it.
So Melissa's got a good point, and that is move forward with the inspection.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Until you have information, we can't make any assumptions, so.
And then from there, we'll put together a plan,
But that-
timeline, what that may look like.
That's really a wild ass guess. I mean, how long it'll last.
You said you had a couple of things.
Well, so, police being the one, so if we're talking one, obviously that gives us something to go on, within that. EMS, is another one, that's a big number though, so I mean, I'm not sure where we stand on that, if that's a discussion point, or if we're not discussing it today. I'm not hearing everybody jump on saying add 3 cents to the tax rate and doing this, so if we decide to do that at a future date, then maybe that's another conversation for a future date, I'm assuming is what I'm kind of hearing. It's complicated, right? So.
Hold back sales tax.
Well, I think there's still a lot of moving parts.
Complicated within that, we may have taken care of the rest of it, because the rest is kind of one-time money. We don't necessarily have to put anything in right now with some of this potential money coming from ABC. That doesn't have to be, I mean, as that's received, typically what we've done in the past is as we know for sure, because they say $300,000, it may not be 300, it's 285 or 315. So what we've done in the past is we get that, Nicole brings a budget amendment to you all, you approve it, we either put it in reserves or we put it towards project at that point. So we can do some of this one-time, stuff at that point if that's agreeable to everybody else. So I guess PD is the one that I'm hearing, or the one I have the question mark on.
Well, I'm always for giving our staff the tools they need, and I would love to see us do 2 officers.
Would you?
And the landscape position. I mean, if that's what we need to do our job right, then that's what we need to do our job right. That was David Harwood. Again, I would love to see us, put an appropriate amount of money back in reserves for the town hall renovations. And I don't know what that is.
You can call it architect.
I heard he's
My
got a
guess is
slack
somewhere
on the job.
between 75 and 150 is my ballpark on what all that's gonna cost, but I could be way off.
Not trying to, my instant opinion on that is that's great use for that ABC money or something as it comes in. So we get the
It's a
money in
one-time.
September and it's $285,000 and some of that goes towards renovations and things like that, The landscape position, and Jennifer's here as well, we're struggling, my personal opinion on that, or professional opinion, is that we're struggling to hire people. And we're struggling to find people. We had an individual hired and it didn't work out last minute. And so we're trying out another individual right now that's been with us on the part-time, on the weekend basis. And if he works out, then he would be filling Tyler's position that's currently open within that. So I'm not sure that adding another position right now, because of the timing of the summer and stuff, really makes sense with all that.
Okay.
So we're trying to get through the current hiring and testing phase of what that's going to look like.
If we went with 2 officers for Aaron, is that possible in the budget? If he doesn't get the grant, if the grant did not come through.
The way that I look at it is that's about a cent for 2.
And it continues to play.
What was the number?
I'm in favor of that.
About 1 cent.
All in money.
1 cent.
1 cent.
Right. It's about
That the money can't fix.
It's about $160,000 for 2 officers, and so that's about a penny.
Well, that's all, hope and pray that 208 doesn't come again. And it's a year that they have to revalue their tax values.
Right.
I
They
think,
be in, under the ground.
Well,
I think.
I mean, I
this-
keep,
I think this could, if you want to do 2.
well, I mean, I keep going back to the study that, and his name just left me, that came to retreat with you, Aaron.
Bradley Swift,
Yes, that,
Yellowstone.
that he presented to us that, I mean, the study showed that we were 2 officers down for what we do in our town. I mean, yeah, for,
Yeah, if you
Yeah.
look at the calculations for the national methods for calculating the needs, based on our estimates of our population we're dealing with.
I see.
Are we 2 down in the wintertime though?
I don't, we've all talked about this, our off-season is not that off anymore. And with the traffic concerns, we still have the same number of vehicles.
Well, you had brought up people a minute ago, it was so busy in the summer, we
Yeah,
don't have that in the winter.
But we see, personally, I don't see the slowdowns, obviously some slow, but I don't think we have real slow periods like we used to see in the winter months and that sort of thing.
if we did that, could you not, well, in the winter months, we lose Swift back to the school. And then could you not use that time maybe for some of the training that you have to send your officers off to?
Yeah,
And when you,
those
when you were
are
bumped up a little
big
bit?
time consumptions for us is training and more state mandated training and that sort of thing.
And I know some of those, they're gone for like 2-3 weeks, aren't they?
Yeah, there are, some of the schools are 2 weeks long, they'll be gone.
So that might
Sagamore or
be
Eddyville or something like
when our
that.
population goes down.
4, and if another one was added, it would probably be 6 maybe.
No, it would be 5.
5.
Is that right?
If 2 were added, it would be
5.
5.
I mean, so 1 position's about a half a cent. I think it's a good ballpark way of looking at it.
You're talking about, when you talk about 5 from the revenue neutral rate or from where we're at right now?
revenue neutral rate.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was like, wow,
Yes.
seems like too much.
Oh, yeah, pretty much.
Better
So,
hope half these people that's appealing their reevaluation don't win.
so a half a cent per officer is what we're talking.
That's what I'm talking about, 208.
So if we approve the 2 officers, that would mean 37 cents instead of 36.
Give or take, yes.
Well, I'm on board with Melissa for 2. I want to ask the manager a question.
Sure.
I have basically said this before, I've given up on the county helping us with this ambulance thing. I've just given up. Do you feel that the people of this town, including you, me, your children, Charlie, his wife, everybody here, are we deemed safe with our current first responders? Or do we need to beef that up some?
I would say that we have been safe. We have not had an incident where we've not had someone to respond. We have great reserves with assistant chiefs, even individuals coming back on call during instances. So we've not been left empty yet. The concern is that we're continuing to see more and more simultaneous calls that are happening within that. So eventually, if we don't receive assistance from the county, it may be something that we have to look at as having additional first responders. Saying that, that's a difficult thing to hire, and Kent will tell you as well, it is a difficult thing to find paramedic level firefighters. And we've got a fantastic crew now that continues to do a wonderful job, and we've been successful recently in hiring some of the lower level positions and then going back for certifications that are ongoing. Some of those take several years, though, obviously, to get some of those certifications. And so that pipeline continues. Our concern has always been, speaking for Kent, and I think Doug can chime in, is that we would like to have that redundancy. We'd like to have the backup ability here locally for when those simultaneous calls happen, that we're not the only ones responding to some of those, or we're not always the first ones, because the concern is that something else happens. You know, there's instances that we know that on a Saturday night in the middle of February, we had 6 calls in 7 hours. That's a lot. What if it's 7 or 8 calls in 7 hours? At what point do we run out of people is always a concern within that. So our request of the county has been for redundancy, and really for them to take notice of the numbers that we're seeing. So we continue to have a higher percentage of calls. We continue to grow with our calls compared to even the town of Boone. We continue to outpace a lot of other areas, and so that's still why we continue to request the full-time ambulance service to be here. I don't think it's fair for me to say that we're not safe. We're safe, but
Now,
we would like to have some assistance and continue to ask for that assistance.
we're not gonna get it from the county. I'm convinced.
There was another situation that we had talked about in closed session. Do we need to talk about that in the closed session that's coming up?
We are not allowed to, based on what we've identified as the reason
Oh,
for
so
closed
we can
session.
only
But
talk about
but
that.
I will say that continues to play, it will continue to play out. That has not played itself out yet, so that's still in the realm of possibility.
Okay.
Hey, right?
We need to know
Yes.
the bias of council for the budget presented.
No, what I'm asking,
I'm satisfied with it. Plus comments, which you're taking down.
Correct, and I will take comments for the next few weeks, so we will take comments up
Yeah.
until we plan on coming back June 14th. So we do have the ability to have another workshop if we think one's needed. I'm not hearing that right now, but as long as we give public notice, we can do that, of course, if we need to reconvene. But on June 14th would be when we would do the public hearing. Any changes made to the budget, we need to make public aware prior to that meeting. That we would need to give them ample opportunity to make them aware of any changes from what's been presented right now.
well, I think you all done an excellent job.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Doing everything.
thank you, Nicole.
Did I say Bob? You did a great job of putting it together there.
And thank you, Shane.
Yes, he definitely helps for sure.
Thank you, Nicole. Your presentation was excellent.
Take 5 and then go into session.
Now, Alan, any idea when Alan's gonna be here?
Phone, I'm gonna look them in, we're texting right now, so I'm
All right, take 5 minutes.
Yep.
We're going to close session.